What up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about how strong is Featherine from the series Umineko no Naku Karu ni. Sorry for the mispronunciation. It's hard for me to pronunciate some Japanese words and names. A lot of times I struggle with it. So I'm just going to call by the English name, which is called When They Cry. Now, this series has many different versions of it, or not many different versions, but there's different routes you can go into when it comes to trying to power scale this verse. Now, there's an anime, there's two different versions of the manga, and then there's a light novel. The anime is nothing like this version of the manga. I think it's like the first version because there are two halves. The first half is completely different. There's no feathering in it. I didn't really check that one out, but it is totally different than the second half. The second half has feathering in it, and the power scaling is mainly more impressive there. So if you guys want to truly power scale it, check this one out with the Japanese name. The one with the English name, When They Cry, is just the first, I guess you could say, parts, and those ones are completely different. The anime is also completely different, and it doesn't have even feathering really in it, and the power scaling is completely different. It's not that impressive, that one, so I would skip that one. I would skip also the first half of the other manga parts, and I would just go through these ones, which has from volume 1 to volume 8, and feathering also shows up in volume 6. And then the light novel, it is actually not that different from this one. The only differences from what I found online is it's a bit longer than this one. It details some stuff out a little bit more. It stretches things out a little bit more. And the ending is a little bit different, whereas the ending in the light novel is far more vague and it doesn't go in depth and explain the stuff. This one does, but the light novel does go more in depth in the murders and the case itself, which doesn't really have anything to do with power scaling. So I will skip that too. I'm only focusing on the manga itself. So yeah, I'm gonna be focusing on this one, but I'm gonna be calling it When They Cry because it's just easier for me to pronounce. And the They Cry series has more witches than just Featherine. Featherine actually only shows up in the sixth volume and to the eighth. And prior to that, from the first to the fifth, she was not anywhere there to be found. It was other witches in there, mainly a witch called Beatrice. Beatrice was the main antagonist in the story at this point. Prior to that, prior to like Featherine showing up, it was her and a couple of other witches. So I'll be going through not only Featherine but all the other characters in the verse, especially comparable to her, to see how powerful she is in general. Because if she's the most powerful, then she should be comparable somewhere around there in terms of power. And the reason why I'm talking about Featherine is due to the fact that a lot of people have stated that Featherine is not only the strongest character in all of anime, but one of the strongest characters in all of fiction. They put her always in the list as number one or number two. Either she's number one or number two, which is insanely and crazy. And from what I've seen, a lot of people state that all the other witches are outer versal, and she's considered to be high outer versal. So you have even the lower witch is considered to be outer versal, and then her being high outer versal, which is a big statement and claim. And I just wanted to check it for myself if she is really that powerful, if she is really high outer versal. People say that she can manipulate fate and create narratives and views the universe and everything as fiction from where she is. Also, there's a infinite multiverse where she hangs above and controls and creates and does whatever, and she has all this insane power, which is crazy. So I wanted to check that, but there was somebody that I also saw making a post stating that Featherine is only human level. So I'll also check into what that guy meant. But most people's general consensus is she's the most powerful. She is high outer versal. She can do whatever she wants. She's above all forms of creation and realities and dimensionalities, especially in their verse. And some people argue that she's even stronger than the entire Marvel universe, which I think is kind of ludicrous, but we'll get into how powerful she is and mainly the other witches. So for the first half, I'm going to be mainly focusing on the other witches and all their other stories leading up to it, because she wasn't really present that much at that point. Also, there's going to be a lot of stuff I'm going to explain or talk about in this that is going to kind of be changed up a little bit, because later on in the story they tell you some stuff but it's kind of vague, and then they go in more in depth into it, and sometimes they explain a little bit more and it changes the concept completely. So I think that's also very important. Now, for the first one, we're gonna for the first thing that happens in the story is apparently there's this family called the Ushida family. They all show up to this island because the grandfather is saying that, hey, look, I'm going to give up my title as the head of the family. I'm going to be dying soon. And I want to transfer over not only this title, but a large sum of gold to all of you guys. So just come to this island for this competition. They all show up, this whole family, and some stuff mysteriously starts happening. A lot of them start to end up dying. A lot of bad stuff starts happening. And then there's a lot of statements about like this witch Beatrice and magic and it's her doing. And there's a lot of arguments about that. Some of them are saying, no, she doesn't exist. And then there's some that say that she does exist. And at a certain point, pretty much all of them start dying except for Battler, which is the main character in the story. He's the main protagonist, and he's one of the family members also. And Beatrice basically shows up to him to basically taunt him and mess with him. And most of the story is between Battler and Beatrice. And then later on, some of the other witches show up. So once she first shows up, she says, with my magic, I can resurrect all the dead, but as long as you don't believe it, it won't hold real power. The dead will revert to corpses. That's what it means. Naturally, a man such as you wouldn't surrender with just this much, would you? So what is happening is pretty much that Beatrice is saying that her powers and ability is to resurrect the dead, and she can do it infinite amount of times. She's considered the Endless Witch, and her Endless Witch title basically means she can resurrect people from the dead or put them back into the dead. So she can create them through their form, and by what their form was, she can bring them back to life or kill them again and keep on doing that in an infinite cycle. But the problem with her power is that even though she can do that, she does have a weakness where it's the fact that the when she's doing it, she has to do it in front of somebody, and when she does it in front of somebody, they have to believe it. It's true, like it's actually happening. If they do not, then it will not happen. And Battler is somebody who does not believe in magic. He does not believe in witches. The rest of the family accepted it, and now she is able to control them. And after she killed them, but he does not accept it, and since he does not accept it, she's saying that, hey, I can bring them back, but since you don't believe, it's gonna do nothing and they're just gonna stay dead. So it also depends on the perception of others, mainly humans. So then after this, another witch shows up because this was the ending of the first volume itself. She basically is messing with Battler. Battler is in a bad situation right now. And then another witch shows up and starts talking to her, saying the Witch of Miracles, who was dreadful power to make those definitely be fulfilled. As long as the probability is not zero, managed to easily deal with the Great Witch, Lady Lambert Delta. I am a weary traveler, just fugitive traveling across the Krakens to run away from the boredom. I only heard of you starting that seems so interesting. I came over. If it turns out not being interesting, I'll leave my own and don't worry. Um, so what is happening? This new witch shows up. She starts talking to Beatrice in this other dimension, which we're gonna see quite a bit. And she's telling her, they basically are introducing her, saying that she's the Witch of Miracles. And and I'm also going to refer to them more as their witch titles more than their names because it's easier to pronounce. But the Witch of Miracles, which she is, has the ability to make any miracle happen as long as the probability is not zero. If the probability is zero, she cannot make a miracle. So as long as there's a chance of something crazy happening or a miracle happening or something good happening, she can make that happen. She also fought against another witch and has beaten her before, Lady Lambert. And Lady Lambert, she's a witch who's also pretty powerful. But these two witches that we hear right now, they're not actually a part of where Beatrice is from, because she literally said, "I'm a traveler from across the Krakens." Now, some of you guys might be saying, "What the fuck is that?" Throughout the story, they're gonna explain. I'll explain to you what the Krakens is, and they do go in depth in that. But the Krakens is actually pretty important as a thing. So I'll get into that, but this is important because one, we have two new witches now, and these are powerful witches too. These two witches are actually stronger than Beatrice, and they're not actually a part of this game that she's a part of, and they're not even a part of where she's at. They're from another place, and they had to go through these Krakens to get there, and she's the Witch of Miracles. Now, later on, as we see Beatrice talking, she says, "With my power to endlessly kill a person, I'll show you even more fun. Take your time and look forward to my endless tale. It seems somebody's trouble took a liking to you, just like when I had a human body. It's really unfortunate if I lend a bit of my power." Uh, she possesses an existence by the name of Beatrice, but she's not necessarily an individual woman. What does that mean? She's not someone of the humans, but a being personifies the rules of this world. So, what does this mean? When I first read this, I thought that when she said she personifies the rules of this world, I thought she meant she can control this world and she personifies what the concepts and rules of these of the universe governs. But that's not true. What she pretty much is saying is that there's a concept we're gonna get later on where it's called a board game where these witches can manipulate humans in different areas and treat them as board games and do whatever they want. And since they create these board games and can mess with them, they need an opponent to challenge. So she's gonna get have Battler as her opponent to challenge. And the reason she's doing this is every time she beats him in these little games, the more magical power she gets, and the more she gets, the more she's able to be revived. Because these witches do have human physical forms, which they can kill off and still have their witch form. But it's easier for them to interact with the real world with the human form. But if they don't want to, they could just stay dead and just be in their witch form and come in here and in and out. But the whole thing about personifying the rules and her existence about that. Also, the individual stuff, I'll explain that later on. They do go in depth in that a little bit. But the whole thing about the personifies the rules, it doesn't mean the rules of the universe. It means literally the rules of the game itself. So wherever they're at, they have a game board that they're able to create and have these battles. And when they create these game boards and these battles, they're able to make rules and make these rules and what happens in these scenarios. So they're able to construct scenarios for the board game itself, which once again, I'll go in depth in explaining. A lot of this stuff I'm gonna be a little bit more vague at first because they do reveal it later on more. But yeah, she's not personifying the rules of the universe. She's personifying the rules of the game itself, only, which is not the whole universe. And then later on, they go on to explain more, saying, "To defeat the girl, you must expose the rules of this world and unravel them. First, you have to survey this world. Then you realize how much pieces and the rules move around. After that, you should look into the victory and conditions of this girl." So, what is happening right here? Um, the Witch of Miracles is explaining more about how to beat Beatrice because Beatrice at this point she's manipulating, Battler, she's messing with him. She created this game where she's trying to recreate different scenarios of how his family died in magical ways and by her and her witch powers. And the whole battle is he's supposed to disprove witches and magic and not accept that they exist, and she's trying to break him down and make him believe in magic and witches and accept that they do exist. And if they do, she's going to gain more power and she's going to be able to be resurrected. But if he wins and is able to disprove all these killings are not done by magic or witch means, and they're actually done by human hands or a human did it, then he could beat her. So by playing this game, she's also kind of at risk, but it's worth it for her because she could at least come to life. But if she loses, she'll disappear from existence. If he's able to be smart enough to prove that the murders are actually happening by a human way or just through straight up murder, and disprove any magic or any witch play into it. But first, he needs to understand the rules of the board game and how it works, and then he needs to understand the worlds that she's creating for him to play this game against him. Because at this point, he's going to be pretty much what's the thing called? At this point, he's pretty much going to be participating in this and playing in this game of hers. And this is only happening on this island itself. It's not happening throughout the whole Earth. In this one, it's only happening on this island. We also do get revealed that there are other witches that had came up from doing these same games, but in different places. It's just that now they're showing up to this one because they're interested because they're usually bored. But yeah, so he just to beat her, he just has to beat her at this game itself, and then go on to explain a little bit more how the game works. And he says this is exactly how Rokugemi is now. Right now, the island is a parallel universe where both the science theory and the magic theory can still simultaneously exist. And there, you and Beatrice lay out your opposing claims like a trial a resident of the world of science such as yourself, it would feel as though the island has been sucked into a world of magic, putting you at a disadvantage. But strictly speaking, rather than slanting towards the world of magic, it becomes completely impartial in regards to the two contradictions of the world. Both claims can exist simultaneously as truth. In other words, at a glance, her claims may also appear as truth. You were shown that you were in a state of confusion. So until you peek into the brain tube, this basically brain generated inside the brain tube. So what is happening is uh as the story progressed, Balor was losing a lot, and he was kind of losing faith in, his arguments and just trying to disprove the magic. And at one point, Beatrice had a fight against her former teacher. She beat her, and then now she is part of the game now. Since she beat her, she's one of the pieces in the game itself. So that could also happen where if a witch beats another witch, then they can place them into the game board. And since these are humans, they can naturally place them in the game board. And especially since she's already killed all of them and just can recreate them. She just recreated Battler and is having this battle with him because she has to have when you do the games, you can't just do it by yourself. You have to have an opponent. So usually if even if they're a witch messing with the person, they have to give the human somewhat of a fair chance. They have to pick one of the humans that disproves in this stuff and then try to prove their point. Now here what is happening is they're explaining what is happening with the island. The island is not just the regular universe, it's turned into a parallel universe. Whatever happened to them and how they got killed by this witch and her magical means has been able to create a kind of like a dimensional barrier that separates this island from the rest of the universe, or at least their game. So now it's in a parallel dimension where if let's say we were to go there, if I was to go there, it would be just a regular island. But since he and his family was killed on there by witches, now it's changed as a parallel dimension for them. So when for him and the rest of his family, it's a parallel dimension separated from our dimension where if we were to go there, it would have no effect on us because we are in the regular human dimension, but for them, they're in a parallel dimension, so they could probably see us, but we couldn't see them, and they would be interacting with them, but not us. So it wouldn't really affect us, but it would affect him. So that's what they're saying about the parallel universe and also with the whole board game situation. Once when they turn this into a board game, they basically what they do is like close off that area. So if it's on an island or in a city or whatever, and something happened, or even in a room, this thing gets separated into another dimension once when that game starts. It's no longer just a part of that dimension or that universe. It's its own separate dimension in its parallel universe that's been created. Later on, they go on to explain more about the humans as one of the other people. Because in the story, there's a lot of mystery solving, and there's two mysteries to solve. One, uh, who murdered these people and how did these murders happen? And then two, the riddle for the witch of Beatrice. And once when you find out the riddle and you beat the riddle, you can obtain the gold and become a witch yourself, which one of the members did. And she obtained the powers of Beatrice, so she became the new endless witch, which means she can bring back the dead no matter how many times she wants. But the original Beatrice starts explaining to her, and her name is Eve, so I'm just gonna call her Eve. So Beatrice starts talking to Eve, and since she's the new Beatrice, she's telling her, "Hey, look, just like Urahama Butler, modern humans generally deny magic. They're a cluster of anti-magic. Magic essentially holds great power, but it is extremely weak against those who refute it. As the amount of people who lost their reverence of the sacred and possesses anti-magic toxins increase, and effect of magic diminishes drastically. That's why Ranja is a place that's suitable for witches. Due to the tales of the witch in the forest, the possible existence of witches permeates fear, and the anti-magic toxins on those islands become weak." So they explain more about the power scaling, the power system, and how it works. Yes, they can use magic. Yes, these witches can do crazy things, but it is still limited by the human perception. Of the humans do not believe in magic or witches, or cannot perceive that magic and witches would exist, then they cannot use their power against them because they produce anti-magic. So in this verse, magic is dependent on humans' belief and people believing in it. So if people don't believe in magic or witches, then it won't exist. But if they do, then it will. So the magic itself is dependent on the belief of the humans. So it just can't come out naturally from its own source like in other medias. it has to come from people actually believing in it. And also, anti magic can be produced in this verse by not needing to have like some insane power system. Is just by being a human who does not believe in them and tries to refute them and disagrees with witches as a whole. So that's also a way to do it. And the only way for the witches to increase the magic and their power and their standing in this universe is by trying to push fears of witches and theories of witches and the possibility of witches. And in the real outside world, in the modern day, it's kind of hard to believe in that. In the past it was really common, but nowadays is not. So we have more, I guess, anti-magic. But there are ways to create this situations and scenarios, and that's by doing it in remote locations where there's less people, and then there's these tales that have been woven into the land itself that, hey, this place is haunted, this place has witches, this place has magic. And then there's already these ideas floating up there of the supernatural. Since that's already up there, the magic can somewhat exist. And once when the people go there and if they somewhat believe in it, then it can exist even more. And that gives the witches an opening to manipulate these people and trick them. And once when they are able to trick them, and make them assume that this crazy stuff that's happening here is through magical means and a witch, it makes them more real. And once when they become more real, they're able to actually properly influence them and affect them. And that's what Beatrice was doing in the beginning with the entire family, and then later on with Battler. By the time she's doing this whole game with Battler, she's already been accepted by the rest of the family except for him, which allowed her to come into existence. And the only reason she was able to do that in the first place was because they had a little girl with them who actually did believe in witches and magic, which makes sense. So after that, we have a little bit more of an explanation. As they say, if magical powers are lost out of the numbers of the people who do not believe in magic, increase in their conviction and denying magic increases. The key to increase the effectiveness of our magic lies in putting in act and splitting up the humans and performing murders that is impossible for humans, and putting up an excessive occult display. People believe in witches. So this is also explained further, like the methods that, hey, look, of humans, if it is dependent on humans believing in magic being real or existing, then we need to try to find a way where we can form these thoughts and ideas that it does exist, because most people are going to disprove it. So we need to separate them. The less humans they are, the more humans they are, they're going to be like, no, there's no way. They're all going to agree that that's not true. But the less that they are, and if you're by yourself and something crazy happens, you're more likely to incline to believe that like it's a magical means. If you're with a group of people, you can all rationalize it. But if you're by yourself, you're more scared and nervous, and you're more willing to believe in something crazy than you are to believe in something that's more normal or realistic. As this is happening, one of the demons pulls up to the new witch. He used to work for Beatrice, and now he's working for Eve. As he pulls up to her, he starts talking and he explains more and goes on to say, and also items with high anti-magic resistance, such as guns, are naturally enemies of witches and devils alike. Please let the furniture handle the situation, or alleviate yourself to a hiding space. Aren't witches supposed to be immune to gunfire? It takes significant preparation to prepare a bulletproof barrier. I'm afraid it might be impossible for now. So the demon's pulling up to her. He has been in this game for a while because he worked for the other witch, and he's telling the new witch that, hey, look, the rules of this world, you already know about the anti-magic from humans, but there's also items that have anti-magic, and one of those items is guns. Because in the real world, guns are the ultimate equalizer. You could kill any human or animal with a gun. So for a human perception, they would not believe that they could survive it. Even though they're magical beings, technically I guess a gun should kill them, because of they believe they're actually human and they're shot, that they would be killed. So that also would affect the witches. So even though these witches have crazy powers and can do things past what humans can, they still do have limitations, and this is one of those limitations. So guns still do affect them, and to the point where he's even telling her, hey, hide yourself, because if you get shot, you're going to pretty much get hurt or killed. And these guns produce anti-magic. So even though these witches are powerful, you could use guns against them and it'll still work, which is kind of ironic, because in most other fictional worlds, if you use weapons like human weapons or regular weapons or like guns like that against witches or magical beings, it doesn't really work. But in this one, it does, because of the anti-magic. And then she's like, I thought they were bulletproof. And then he explains that actually they're technically only bulletproof when they create this barrier. If they're able to create a bulletproof barrier, they can protect against it, which means that normally if they get hit by a bullet, it will kill them or harm them. But they can protect against this by creating a barrier, but it does take some time. So they aren't that powerful. It is kind of a big weakness to create a barrier to protect herself, especially if quick. We do see later on that she's able to create a barrier pretty quick. So some witches can do it fast, but most witches, if they cannot bring it up quick, or if they get somebody gets the drop on them with the gun, they can pretty much blast them and kill those witches directly with that. So then later on, we go on to Beatrice coming up to Eve and kind of lecturing her on being too cruel because now Battler doesn't like what is happening, and she kind of feels for Battler, Beatrice. It's a weird situation with her and him. They're kind of enemies, but they're lovers. And she likes him and she doesn't want him to be hurt. And him seeing his own family member, because Eve was one of the family members that found the clues to the Beatrice's riddle and solved it and thus got the power and the gold. Now since she became witch, she's more cruel and more messed up. And this is affecting Battler and he doesn't like this. So Beatrice shows up on his behalf to try to calm her down and saying, hey, is that your opponent in your game said? I've heard you from Rovena. The person should have delivered the common trade here. Have to deliver the message since that person is in a different world, a parallel world that can be said to be rather close, yet never cross with this. That world has nothing to do with me, isn't it? So, as you see right here, she goes in depth to explain that Battler is in the other dimension. Like I said, they're in this other dimension where they can see what's happening on this island, but this island's also in a parallel universe. What happened was once the scenario was created and the board game was created, it separated this island from the rest of the world and put it in a parallel world. Now you can still go there, but if you go there, you're going through just the regular physical one. But these guys are kept in a parallel one where they keep on coming back to life over and over again, and it's in a time loop. So this parallel world has them stuck in a time loop where it keeps on repeating and they're put in this torment where they keep on dying and being brought back to life and their fates are being manipulated. And that's the parallel world. And then there's the regular world where you can go there and these people were long dead, but time has passed. Because this happened in 1986 from October 4th to October 5th. And the timeline is stuck between that October 4th to October 5th and what happened in the situation. It keeps on reappearing. And later on, they explain why that's the case. But then there's also another dimension outside of this parallel world where you can view it, and that's where Battler and Beatrice are having these games to manipulate these people. So he's in another parallel world that is basically you can look through this to this other parallel world which the island is in, but they don't really cross over connect. The only way you can, but Beatrice can go through it because she's has magical powers herself. But that other dimension is also really important. I'll go get into explain that, but it's just another parallel one. Later on, we have as we go on forward and the situation changes. I know there's a lot of stuff I'm skipping. The only reason I'm skipping it is because most of that stuff that I'm skipping has nothing to do with the actual power scaling. So I'm only going to focus on the parts of the story where the power scaling actually matters or reveals things. I'm going to be skipping the stuff that has no importance or no relevance at all. So yes, if I do skip around a lot and it's a little bit here and there, just know as I am skipping a lot of shit that is unnecessary. But then going on later on, Beatrice is talking to the little girl who was a part of the family. She was the first to actually believe in witches. The only reason Beatrice was able to influence them and do anything and come into existence was because this girl already believed in witches and magic prior to coming to there. If she didn't, or it was just the adults which they didn't believe in the midst of this witch on this island, then she wouldn't have been able to come to an existence. But luckily, she was there, so it helped her out. And then we find out she actually is a witch. She gets witch magical powers herself and becomes a witch herself. But she has a pretty interesting powers as Beatrice basically starts talking to her, saying, how come so that Satura manifests itself perfectly in the human world, having as a core is a vessel made of cloth and cotton, and you say you have other friends like this? Well, I don't understand. Well, it doesn't mean that Sakura is amazing. It means that Sakura and you are both magnificent. Be proud of it. It seems that your power to generate an existence out of nothing stands out from the crowd. Turn 1 into 100 is simple. To produce 1 from 0 is very difficult. So what is happening? Apparently this little girl's her name is Maria. Her powers have activated and now she's a witch. And since she's a witch, she's able to bring life and souls into inanimate objects. She has like a little like lion teddy bear thing. And she was able to make it come to life by creating a soul within it. And Beatrice is like, oh, damn, your power is pretty impressive. You have the ability to bring life to things that have no life in it and bring souls and existence from nothing. And by doing that, that's very impressive because what I can do is take something that already exists and keep on happening and making it happen. So if somebody died, she can bring back their soul over and over again and keep on doing it. Whereas Maria does not bring back the soul over again. She brings a soul from nothing, which is more impressive, as she says. So that's just the difference between their power. And Maria's power is a little bit more impressive and completely different. And as this is happening, Beatrice starts to explain to Maria more how her powers work and what she is. She goes on to say, "And Maria, from today you will call yourself Maria, the apprentice witch of the origins. Witch of origins, correct? The Witch of origins is the title of the witch who seeks the path of the creator. Right now, you're no more than an enchanter and inserts magical power into small things around you. However, after 1,000 years of training and studying, it wouldn't be any dream to create a galaxy, let alone magic system from the inside of your heart." So Beatrice is telling her that, hey, your title now is the Witch of Origins, and every witch has their own title, so they're all unique in their own way. And her power is the Witch of Origins, so she can create things. That's what it means to go to the beginning and create it, right? And she says she seeks the path of the creator. What this basically means, they explain it later on. It's basically just this higher class for the witches, and the creator witches are basically witches in the highest class of witches. This consists of, Featherine, um, the Witch of Miracles, and Lady Lambert, which was the Witch of Miracles' enemy that she fought against. Beatrice is not actually as powerful as that. She's only stuck to the island itself, and she hasn't gotten to the creator class itself. But Maria is kind of going to that path because she's unique and different, and she can create. And Beatrice even stated that she could possibly create, a galaxy or, a magic system, which is pretty impressive and powerful. So at her full power, she could probably create a galaxy. But we do get explained more about, a bit about how their magic works and the whole power system as a whole, and it kind of changes it up a little bit. But after this, we do skip quite a bit because at this point, Battler's badly losing to Beatrice, and as he's losing, there's the other witch who's the Witch of Miracles, and she's kind of battling against Beatrice because she found this game pretty fun and saying, "Hey, look, you have a pretty fun game. I'm gonna join in, but I'm gonna play against you, and I'm gonna help a battler. But since battler's losing, she needs to give him a bigger advantage. So she seeks out his sister. Now, what happened with his sister is the fact that all the other family members came to the island because they were called upon there, but she didn't show up because she was sick. So, as a kid, she was too sick to show up. So, she was actually excluded from the island, which saved her life and led her life to go on forward normally. Whereas the rest of the family ended up dying on the island. And since they died, now they're part of Beatrice's game, and they're stuck in a time loop between October 5th and I think it was October 5th and 6th or 4th and 5th. It doesn't really matter. They're stuck between 2 days, and this is being played as a game. And every time the game is over, the time loop is over. But it keeps on going in a time loop, and time progresses further. They were all the way back in 1986, and his sister is now from 1998, and she's trying to come to the island to find out what happened. As the Witch of Miracles was saying, "Hey, I want you to help me out, and if you help me out in this game, if you come to the island, then I'll help you out with giving your family back." And now she's getting pulled up by one of the other witches as she's telling her the truth that no, that's not really what's happening. As she goes on to say, "If you win the game, Battler will go back to the 6-year-old Angie of 1986, right? And what about you? You are the Orihima Oshirima, sorry if I can't pronounce it, Angie of 1998, to whom Battler didn't come back to. Even in the first place, you aren't the 18-year-old Angie of 1998, the one doing a journey with her. The one is doing a journey with her bodyguard. Strictly speaking, you're a completely different person going in by the name of Angie Beatrice, and you are a kid burned sent in to make Battler win, just a piece of the witch." So what is happening here? Apparently, the scenario with the island, uh, even though the whole family technically died, there was one person that survived, and that was Eve. As Eve survived and she left the island, she was in the hospital. Years had passed, the 12 years had passed, and she was dying. And Andrew was trying to ask her, like, "Hey, what happened? Because that's her aunt. She's like, what happened on the island? But she went crazy and she was not going to tell her. And she ended up dying, messing with her. So she's like, what the hell is happening? So the witch of Miracle shut up to her and said, hey, if you want to know the truth, I can help you out, but you're going to need to help me out. And if you do this, you can get your family back and know the truth fully. So help me use you so you can help Battler win. And she agreed. Since she agreed, it basically ended up splitting her from her regular self to her witch self. So it created a witch self. Um, every time these humans get their turn into a witch, because they can reach into being a witch if they find out the solve the mystery of Beatrice's mystery. Eve did it first, and now she's done it. So she's taken the title from Eve, and Eve has died. So now she's the new witch. But once when you become a witch, it separates you from your body of two. You have the human side and then the witch side. The witch side is not a real person, is just a magical version of you, whereas the human side is the real one of you, and that person is doing something separate and individually on their own, whereas the witch side can basically become a piece of the game and can actually interact with the game. So the witch side can interact with the game, but the human side cannot, because the human side is not on that dimensional level. Also, going throughout the story, it will explain more what this means, but for right now, we know that whenever you reach witchhood, it separates you into two different versions of yourself: your witch self and your human self. Your human self and your witch self have no real, encounters. The witch self can see what the human self is doing, but the human self cannot see what the witch self is doing. And the witch self of her basically is a part of the game, whereas the human self is not. The human self is just in the regular world and can is trying to go to the island to find out the real mystery. She's basically the witch self is just playing a part of the game that Beatrice and the witch of miracles are playing in. And her human self is going to the actual island to see what truly happened, because there is the real case, which this is not happening. And then later on, as Battler shows up to Beatrice, because he keeps on getting revived and changed over and over again, he's talking to her. He says, I've certainly met you a few times in this world as though we were passing by each other. What does that mean? You humans are the only ones who exist in this human world. When you doubt me, it makes a huge poison against me. After so many games, I've advanced my pieces, cornered you, and put you bit by bit, tried to cut you through the walls and died the white squares of the human world within the black squares of the Witch of Illusion, and then I finally succeeded. The board game is already completely black. It was completely cut off from the human world and changed into an island of demons stuck in and cheese and fondue into hell. So basically, Battler's showing up and saying, hey, I've seen you multiple times before, even though she's basically manipulated, because there's two versions of Battler. There's the one in the other dimension who's having the game against her, and then there's the one within the game that's being manipulated. So the piece, the chess piece, as they say, or the game piece. So he's the game piece, and then there's the regular one. And this will make more sense towards the ending, like I said. Um, but she's telling him that, hey, look, I cut off you guys off from the human world. Like I said, they cut off this island from the rest of the world. And they don't mean literally. It's not like you can't go to the island. You can go to there. But when you go to there, you're not going to be a part of the game. You're just going to be seeing the real island and the aftermath of what happened. Whereas she separated into another dimension. So there's two versions of it: the regular one and then the other dimensional one, which is the board game, which she's messing with them and said, and since she's saying she separated him off to another dimension, she's now taking control over it and beating him, and she's gaining more power and now controlling this world even more and being able to use him as a piece even more, though her illusion now is taking over and the rest of the real world is cut off. And we do see this representation later on as we see the witch version of Angie going there. And as she goes there, it says the boundary between 1986 and 1998, this world and the other world. So this shows you a visual representation of the difference. You see outside of it, it's light and normal, but then when you go in there, it's dark and it's raining, and that's the separation of the dimensions. The outside one is 1998, and which is considered the future, and inside is 1986, which is considered the past. But as the story develops more further, Angie, as she arrives, they start to talk and say, uh, don't you want to defeat Battler and create the world you wish for, or you're gonna lose and give up everything that's swallowed by your magic that is not over by then? The Golden Land is a world created through the crystallization of only trying to Beatrice's feelings alone. If it is the way that this is world will cease to exist. So basically, she's saying that there's this golden land that also I forgot to mention. It's kind of like a paradise where everybody can be happy, and this is created by both Beatrice and Maria. And this is like the final goal of the story, or the place that they're trying to go to, all these people. And Angie's showing up there saying, "Hey, aren't you gonna, finish the game, finish this world? Or are you gonna just let it go down? Because if you do, then that dimension is gonna also be destroyed, and the dimension cannot exist without the both of you believing in it and creating it." So there's that. Then later on, we get a little bit more of an explanation as the story develops about what these kakurai are. Once again, I'm going to be really bad at pronunciating and saying names of these things because of like how weird it's worded. So I'm just gonna have that pronunciation. Just you're gonna have to accept that. So this is the thing that I was talking about earlier, that they were going through a bunch of them. She said she was traveling and she went past these things. And this is very important because this does go into the whole multiverse thing, because a lot of people keep on saying there's a whole multiverse here and there's other universes and stuff like that. And that's what these things are. So it goes on to say, I'll spin the Kraken to find the solution. I'll remember this game, the third game, Inquiry. So are these Kraken? I'm just going to call them Krakens. So these Krakens are similar to memories. They aren't memories, they're complete worlds. So Ballard assumes that these Krakens are basically memories, but the other witch, Lady Lambert, is like, no, 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 they're not. Also, she's the witch of certainty, so she makes things certain. So I'm just gonna call it the witch of certainty. So witch of certainty is like, no, they're not. Memories. They're other worlds. They're other worlds. And what do you mean by other worlds? Well, a lot of people say it's a multiverse, but it's not. What it is every time that there's a game being played on this island, it creates a new Kraken once when it's done. Okay. So since they're stuck in a time loop and it's constantly doing the same thing over and over again, but just with different scenarios and being manipulated by these witches, and this game is being played, every time the game is played and finished with, it ends up creating a new Kraken. These Krakens are just basically shards of previous games and the previous worlds that they were in, and it keeps on as worlds, they're basically time loops. So it's not a multiverse. A multiverse is a collection or the total sum of every parallel universe, which are simultaneously existing at the same time, and is basically just a bit of a change in the timeline. Like there's another universe where the Nazis won, or another universe where Russia won, or there's another universe where nuclear fallout happened and everybody died. And these are different parallel worlds where history has been changed or altered or whatever, and they all simultaneously exist. But the Krakens don't work like that. The Krakens only go through the games, and the Krakens are being manipulated by these witches. And then also, they're not happening simultaneously. They're something that happened previously in the past that turned to a crystal. So they have no real interaction with this world. It's just the same universe put in a time loop, and every time the time loop is done, it creates a new of these shards, and they are now no longer worlds anymore. They are these shards. So the clear-cut difference between a multiverse is the same universe but separated into different aspects, whereas this is just the same universe played over again as a time loop. So it's the one universe looped multiple times, and on top of it, they're not existing simultaneously. They're all separate, and they're just crystal shards. So it's not a multiverse. That is completely wrong, and that's misunderstanding it. And also, there's more to the Krakens than just even that, but I'll get into that later. So as we go on, Beatrice is talking to one of the family members as she's going crazy because now she's kind of changing and becoming better as a person. And she says, don't stop overthinking, don't give up. I'll just hear out. Just don't admit defeat. You're certain will overcome this trouble with bringing out the certain results. That's the power of the witch of certainty. You might lose that magical power if you must believe in yourself. I understand. So she's now turned to a good guy, Beatrice, and she's trying to fight against the witch of certainty because she's trying to manipulate it the way she wants it. And she's telling one of the pieces that, hey, you got to keep on fighting. You might be a piece in this game, but you do have power. And as long as you try to fight to win and believe you can win, it will the witch of certainty's ability will not fully be able to come through, because to be certain of something, you need to have the other side completely admitting that they're defeated. So it has to be certain 100%. If there are any things that go against that being certainly happening, then that certainty will not fully happen. I know it's a little confusing, but simplest way to think about it is If you believe something is certain, it means that everything lines up with that perfectly. If there's something that does not go with it perfectly, then it is not certain. So if everybody gives up, then it's certain that you're gonna win. But if there's something that's still fighting, then there's no certainty, 100% certainty that you're gonna win. There is still somebody that's gonna push back against it, and there's a possibility that they could win. So that's where you can fight against the certainty thing. But at this point, Battler actually wins one of the games, and when you win the game as a human, you can actually become a witch and gain magical powers, which he did. Now he's the winner, and they explain something about a game master. A game master basically means whenever you win the battle, you basically control that world and you become the master of that world, which is the game. So now you're the game master, and he won. He's now the game master. It says, in other words, now he has reached the position of the ruler of this game. Sorry, Erica, you have barely become the ruler of this fragment, and now you're deprived of it. This new lord of this fragment is Ushima Battler. So, like I said, when you win the game, you can become the ruler of the game. And when you become the ruler of the game, it's his own separate kraken, which is also considered a fragment. I'll just call it a fragment. Each of these fragments are just the krakens. It's just a different term that they have for it. So these fragments are basically representations of the former games, which is these time loops. And once one is done, it's done. But if you choose not to finish it, then you get to be the master of that or go on to the next. Since he won this one, and now he since he won it, he's the game ruler. The next game, he gets to control the narrative how he wants, and they do go in depth and explain what that means. He was against another character that was created by the Witch of Certainty to play against him, but she ended up she thought she won, but towards the end, Battler came back with a comeback, and she ended up losing, and now he's the ruler and not her, and he can control the next game how he wants to. Um, and as this happens, then we finally get Featherine introduced into the story, and she's talking to Battler's sister Angie because she's also kind of like an outsider, but also part of the board game as a whole, and she has her own effects directly in it. So we also get explained more about Battler in the game, and this right now might be a little confusing, but once again, towards literally the ending, or more towards the ending, I will explain everything, and everything will make far more sense. So as Angie's talking to her, she says, why am I alive? Thought in the lines I was killed cruelly because I revealed my real name and broke the rule. You don't have to get so angry. I don't seek you as my peace. I'm an onlooker. I want you to become an observer of this fragment that Beatrice spins. Observer, I don't really understand what it. I refuse. I have to refuse. Formerly, I was looking at the fragments through Battler. So what is Featherine doing? Featherine is now, like I said, she's reached the creator class, which is another dimension that's above the witches dimension, because there's the human world, there's the witches dimension where they can manipulate the human world. Then there is the creator dimension, which is where the top level witches are, which not only can they manipulate the human world, but they can also manipulate the witch world. So she's on a higher class, and that's why people are saying she's like high out of versal, where these guys are just out of versal because they can control I guess like reality and humans as witches, but she can control the witches and the humans. Um but right now she's saying, hey, look, I'm not trying to use you as a piece. I'm just an observer in this dimension. I'm not interfering with the game or any of this stuff. I was watching Battler play, and I was watching him as the, as the, main protagonist. And now, since, things have changed and he has won, things are different. Now I need somebody else to look through. So I need you to be here with me, and you're going to be an observer with me. And all you have to do is basically, like, read the game. And if you read the game to me, we can see what's going to happen and what's going to develop. So she's just kind of like viewing it as like a show. And she's considered a witch of theater going, which basically means she loves watching drama and theater, and like the story unravels. So she's just there for her entertainment, and has Angie there to read the story and what's happening so she can get her perspective on the story. And she was going through Battler's situation, but since Battler now is the game master, he can no longer, she doesn't want to look through him any longer. But now, since he's the game master, we get explained a little bit more of how the game board works, as the butler is talking to him, and he says, It was harder than I thought it would be. I always thought that the game master could easily make a story however they wanted. Even Beatrice Sama had to think about the contradictions every time she gave birth to a new story, constantly fighting against logical errors. Logical errors, it's when the story's consistency does not follow and makes a contradiction. The game board will immediately come to an end, and this is made as a fatal violation. So even with the board games and manipulating the human world and creating these different games and scenarios, which the board game is the representation of that manipulation, it is not something that you can do with unlimited amount of control and you have no limits in there, right? Because usually when people hear stuff like this, and this is the biggest problem when it comes to people in power scaling, if they hear them saying a OP ability or a scenario or whatever, they give this whole no limit fallacy, meaning that there's no rules, there's no boundaries, they don't have to hold back, and they can do whatever. But there are always rules, especially if the story explains it. And the story right here is directly explaining it, stating that, hey, look, yes, even though you are now in the position that Beatrice was, where you can control the board game and you're the board game master and you have all this power and you're above this human world, it doesn't mean you can control it and do whatever you want. The board game still has to have to make sense. There has to be logic. It has to be consistent, and these scenarios that you're creating have to make sense. If there's any contradictions in your story or your writing, then it creates a problem. And once when it does, it ends up destroying the board, and it ends up actually being a penalty on you and a bad violation, and it can be very serious. So if even if you have the ability to create the board game from the world and do what you want, you can't do whatever you want. You have to construct a story and craft a narrative that is reasonable, that is logical and consistent. If it is not, not only will that game not cease to exist, it'll break and you will have to redo it again, meaning that that won't come into reality. But also on top of that, it will be a violation, you'll be punished, and you might end up dying. So even if you're the game master, you have to follow rules. If you do not follow the rules, your game will not come into fruition, and your life will be in danger. And then he goes on to say, it is the biggest and the worst mistake which side can make, especially when Battle Summer started to get difficult. She had a very difficult time, I see. Of course it is. My game today, I wonder if the game is worth it to show. Genji has better open your eyes. It's been a while since I composed her body from the personifications of the rules. So, um, he's going on to explain more further that, hey, this is a very big problem on the Witcher side because the human that's playing against them is not manipulating or creating the narrative or creating this board game. They're just participating in it and trying their best to win and protect themselves. So since you have the ability to create that, you also have the penalty and the and kind of like the what's that word? Basically responsibility. You have the responsibility to make it proper because if you don't, you're screwed. So now you might have gotten more power, but you also got more responsibility, like Spider-Man usually, Uncle Ben usually says. But then we have Beatrice. She died. She got recreated by Battler, and now she's talking to the former Beatrice, which was one of the Beatrice or one of the Krakens. What is happening is she went to she got help from her former teacher to go to the dimension where, Featherine was and told her, hey, I need some help to get back who I truly was. And Featherine said, hey, it's fine. There's books that I have. And in these books, it is stories of the former games and the former, fragments that you can go into and basically understand. So she's seeing her former self from these books by going back into the former games and just interacting with that. As she's talking to herself to understand, she says, you don't know such as opening the windows, my little sisters. Do you not know of the anti-magic poison of the humans world? The era of which is long existed. Humans were very pleased with what they thought the rule of all creation, as so they had the state where they denied our existence and held a strong poison. At that poison to us extremely harm by just being seen at by humans, we will disappear from where we are standing. Basically the same as the human eye poisoning at us. So once again, even though the witches have power over humans and can do all these crazy things and can manipulate us, it doesn't mean that they have infinite power or they have no limits and that humans are just completely at their mercy. Humans can still do things. And one of the things is create poisons by disbelieving in them. And humans, if they believe that they create everything and the witches didn't, then the witches can't have any power over them. So in the past, it worked in the witches' favor because humans were easier and more gullible to trick, but nowadays it's harder and people are less willing to believe in supernatural shit. And since they're less willing to believe in it, they create more toxins, which prevents them from existing in the world. And so much to the point that if regular humans were to look at these witches, it would end up destroying them. So these witches have to be keep themselves away from regular humans. They have to kind of manipulate them into believing witches exist and tricking them, and then forcing them to believe in it for them to be able to affect them. If they were to come out of this island, go to regular people and try to say they're witches and have magic and try to show their power, they would end up getting destroyed because humans wouldn't believe in and look at them like, what the hell? And then they will be disintegrated, which is pretty weird. They go on further to say most magic items lose their power if they're not handled overly personally, but if many people believe in the item, it can also perceive its power. Whether magic we witches wield depends on the humans, whether it really shows an effect. So once again, Beatrice is now explaining that, hey, there's not only people who can create magic from believing in witches and magic, but also in items. So if they believe this item has magical properties, then it can create magic. And their powers and magic and witches are still dependent on humans, like I said. So if anybody says, "Oh, these witches can do whatever," it's like, no, no. These witches can only exist and can only use that power within the depending on humans' belief in that. If humans do not believe in it, it cannot happen. So that's a big weakness and a big hindrance on their power itself. Um, as they go on to say, but from this demonic tea room standing around the board game, it's nothing more than a symbol of what will be breaking the free of our parents. But it's really because a lot of demonic game, if only a piece on a game which reflects only one world among the endless number of Kirkara, I just take a human life. So she had to kill somebody in the game, and she's stating that, yeah, um, what's the thing called? She's like, "Yeah, I know that this is like just a game and we're just pieces in this game, but still affects me." And as she said, like, the fact that, which reflects one world among the many, meaning that there was many other games and this is just one of the games that they're participating in. And which once again people take this as this means that this is a multiverse, but it's not. It's just the same universe repeated and turned into fragments, and it's not simultaneously happening. They're no longer operating. There were things in the past. But then further on as they go, as now Battler is playing against one of the other people, they go on to say, well, this is true. What's kind of this game is to explain a seemingly magical and impossible crime with something other than the magic is objective of this game. It is possible to do this in this game. In other words, the witch side has to do to ensure that the crimes can be possible and replaced using tricks rather than magic. As long as the human side is unable to see through the magic tricks, and illusion will continue to exist. That means when creating a lock room murder with magic, one must create a crime which is possible with human hands. So once again, like I said, even within these games, there are limits and is based off of human perception. Not only do humans create magic by their perception and witches, but they also uh magic is also kind of limited by the humans' capabilities, meaning that you cannot do something magical that a human couldn't do without a certain circumstance. So, like, let's say, if a human kills somebody, like a human can kill somebody behind a door, but they would have to have some access to killing that person to do it. Now you can go against that with using magic, but the magic still has to be possible if a human can do it. It cannot be like something like destroying a universe or a star because that's not possible for a human to do. It has to be killing somebody or causing some destruction somewhere where nobody saw, so there's a mystery behind it, and that mystery can create this illusion of it possibly being done through magic or a human means. So it has to be in between these two scenarios. It has to be either done by human means or magical means, but the magical means is tied to the human means. So if it's not humanly possible, then the magic cannot exist. Now, if it is humanly possible but kind of hard, then the magic can exist. And that's what's happening in this game. As a whole right now. So as the story progresses further, we see more of Angie and Featherine talking and explaining how this world works and how magic works. And like I said, this is very important because a lot of people, they don't go in depth into the writing and what the story's telling us and these limitations because they want to upscale these characters so much. They want to say they can do whatever, they have the ability to control reality, this and that. But then the story also gives you extra things like, oh, there's limits to it, there's rules, there's things that they have to follow, and that will basically lower the power scaling. If you say that they have no limit and there's no rules or like no limits to what they can do, then you can make them as much as you want. But once some of those rules are actually introduced, then it lowers that power scaling because it means that they do have limits. And the story does explain that, but a lot of people don't really go in depth in that. They pretend as if they can do whatever. And this right here specifically disproves that, as Angie goes on to say, I finally understand why I commanded the Seven Sisters to kill the irritating classmates at Estate Lucy's. They weren't able to do it. You're referring to the fact that magic cannot do what you can't do with your own hands. That is true. If I really had the resolve to kill my classmates there and then, no, if I can get those classmates to a place where there won't be any observers, the Seven Sisters of Purgatory could have carried out the murders. Yes, I could change what I've done personally into magic. While magic is meant to work magically, it can do it. It can do what I myself I am unable to do. Sorry. Uh, so what is she saying right there? This is the biggest thing that disproves a lot of these people's arguments and is very, very important. Like I said, to take into consideration, because when you don't take these things into consideration, it changes the context of the power scaling a lot more. This actually lowers the power scaling a lot more because this means that magic cannot work or operate or exist without it being within the confines of human possibility and the human means. So she in the scenario before, she was dealing with her classmates that were picking on her and making fun of her, and she wanted to kill them because she became a witch now and was trying to use the her like her summons to attack them, but she couldn't do it. And she was wondering why. I have magical power. I can't kill them. But then now she realized that, oh, I can't kill them because you can't kill somebody through a magical means without uh when it goes past the human limits, right? Because if she showed it to a bunch of people, like regular people killing a bunch of regular people, it wouldn't make any sense. The only way it would happen is through magic, which it it it's impossible. It has to have some human, possibility too. If it has no human possibility, the magic cannot work. So she said, "Well, if I really wanted to work, I should have gone behind the area and killed them when there's no observers, because then, if everybody sees it, it's like, well, you have to directly kill them yourself, right? You have to go after them and attack them yourself. If you're not doing it and something magically is attacking them, it wouldn't make any sense. But if you're doing it behind an area where nobody else can see, then you can say, hey, they possibly killed them themselves or some magical being did it. So now that that scenario is in play, that means that magic can actually exist. And magic cannot work or exist unless it is possible for the person that's doing it, right? So these are humans. Humans cannot kill somebody in ridiculous means. They have to kill them in a means where it's more reasonable, where you can say they possibly did it or it was magic, or in a way where nobody else saw it and then they can't really understand. They might know that they possibly did, but they don't have the definitive proof or evidence that it did happen, so they can't disprove it. So magic does have a limitation, and that's through the human's capability, and that is through the observation of others. If you can kill somebody in a way where it could be happening magically possible and humanly possible, then it can happen. If it's only magically possible, then it cannot happen. So if people see you like not do anything, just stand there and getting a bunch of people killed, it is not possible. You would have to interact to do that. And the best way to do that is to do it in a secluded area where nobody saw. So that way you like, well, I don't have to actually go after them to attack them because nobody else is seeing it. It could have been anyway, right? I know it's confusing, but Eh, is no other way I can explain it. I'm sorry. So she goes on to say, magic can only work. It's magic when one can actually do oneself, and then disguises it with magic. Interesting. This Erica seems to understand that from the start. She absolutely believes the crimes can be explained with tricks, and she'll never surrender to the witch. But Battler in the past did not hold on to this belief, which is why he has been toyed with up until now. Once you see through this rule, there is no way that the witch can win. So you must make the opponent surrender before he sees through this rule. That longer you drag the story, and the more hints you give, the more unfavorable it becomes for the witch's side. It comes to my mind again. So going even further, as they explain, once again, you cannot do something that through magic that you can do through your own physical self. So her human self cannot kill these people in a magical means without without it being exposed that it didn't make any that a human couldn't do it at all. There has to be a human possibility to it. Um, and that's just how it works. And she's like, oh, so you finally understand, because the other girl knew this already. She was a detective that was playing against Battler. Battler didn't know. And he didn't know, Beatrice was able to use this against him and manipulate him and try to break his will before he finds out. If he found out that, hey, even with your magic and all the powers that you have, you cannot just do anything. It has to have a human limitation or human possibility. If that's the case, then I can disprove magic and I can disprove human witches, because it could be done by a human too. So if it's done by a human, I can prove it through human means, instead of just magical means, where she was trying to trick him that to believe that only magic could do this. But no, it's always possible that magic and human means can do this. The only difference is you have to disprove that it wasn't done by magic and it was done by human means. So you need to find a way to disprove her arguments and prove your arguments. But that's harder for the witch to try to disprove, that it truly happened, what truly happened, right? Because you're giving them a false scenario that it was magic, but it wasn't. It was regular human means. So there's a problem there. And like I said, this limits it because this means that the witches cannot use their magic to any extent, right? They still have a limit. Their limits are within human means and comprehension and human capability. If they are not, then it will not work. So Featherine and all these other witches cannot just do whatever they want. They have to still follow the rules and limits of humans' capability. And same thing with the board game, right? Because people say, well, that means that they can manipulate the board game however they want. No, they have to have it consistent with what they're doing. And one of the other rules of consistency that they have to follow is it has to be consistent with human possibility, and it has to be within a realm where it could have been done through human means or magical means. It can't just be purely magical means. So even when you can manipulate the reality into a board game, it does not mean you can manipulate the reality however you want. Still a human, it's still limited by human levels. So there's a problem there. As it goes on, it says, I think I heard about this earlier in the story. This is when two sides of the story don't match up and creates a contradiction. This is the biggest, worst mistake of the which side can make as a violation of the rules. I see. A logical error is when the trick is impossible. For example, during the time when Marie and Erica were fighting over the magic of the candy appearance. So basically, Featherine is saying to Angie that, hey, she's found out that, oh, we're talking about the logical error. So she's like, yeah. So you could not create a logical error. If you create a logical error and create a trick that is impossible to do without magic, then it is gonna be a logical error. The trick still has to be able to be done by a human or magic. If it's only done by magic, then it's a logical error and it's impossible because it has to still be possibly done by a human. If it's impossible for a human to do it, then it cannot exist. So their powers cannot exist if it's not possible for humans either. So there is a limitation there. And she's giving her an example saying, to put it simply, it's all a simple trick. But Maria didn't actually see the process that was presented with the results. She accepted the magical illusion that the candy appears in the cup with the magic and therefore allowed the magic to be established, which means the candy in the cup is just like the letter that appeared in front of the Erica right now, isn't it? Yes, one of a kind of magic is a lie and an illusion without any observation, and the other kind of magic is which accompanies a result that is seen by an observer. In the case of the letter, that is the latter. It has to be a trick to be claimed by the witch that placed the latter a letter. With a magic, only China is creating a magic which matches a result. Since all the survivors were sealed within the locked room in the guest room, it is possible for the appearance of the letter to be established as a strange magic where it's only possible for a witch to place it there. However, but it has to be a trick which is actually possible. So going through this again, so Maria, she she believes it. She already believed in magic. So to make Beatrice a magic trick of making the candy appear to exist, she closed her eyes so she didn't see it. Once you close your eyes, anything could have possibly happened. But if you see it directly, then you can disprove it. If you can disprove it, then it doesn't exist. And Featherine even said it. Yes, one kind of magic is a lie. So there's one where you're manipulating the observers. You have people seeing, but you're manipulating them to thinking that it's really magic. And if you can trick them, then it does become magic. But if you cannot trick them, then it won't become magic. And then the other one is where you have somebody there and that person just believes in it, which Maria, she did, and she played along into the magic trick. Since she played along to the magic trick, she helped the magic come to existence. And then when it came to Battler's situation in this game, he created a scenario where all the people were locked in a room, but there was a letter left outside. But that doesn't make any sense. If everybody was locked in the room and there's now a letter outside, how does that happen? Featherine is saying the only way that could possibly happen is through magic. but that's impossible. You cannot just do it through magic. That you can't just say, "Oh, this happened because of magic." It has to be, well, there could have been human, but it could have been magic. If you leave it open ended for both sides, then it can happen. But if it's only one way where it's just magic, then it cannot happen at all. And that's what he did. And that became a contradiction where he made it try to make it through a way where this murder happened through directly through magic and no human way possible. And that does not work. Um so then they go on to say in Erica's case, in order to see through the trick in the candy in the cup, she attacked the blue truth, claiming that the candy was stuck into the cup where Maria's eyes were closed. Since that indeed the truth, there is no red truth that can use Maria use to relate. However, if she did, what if she said that locked in the room was maintained until the point of the cup was opened? Against no one tricks or grievous previous rules. However, if you immediately change another trick, doesn't go against the red truth, it might be a little unfair, but it would be the red truth in case the witch side has immediately presented a trick. What does not contradict itself? So what she's saying is that, hey, look, the other lady, Erica, since she's a detective, her argument against Maria's like, Magic does exist. Beatrice brought candy from nothing." But then she was like, well, you closed your eyes. And at that time she closed her eyes, she could have hit something under there and then made it look like it was magic. And if that's the case, then it isn't real magic. So she can disprove it. And that was the truth. She didn't really use magic. She did a trick. And Maria was just being stupid and closing her eyes and then just not believing in it. So that kind of, disproved it. So she showed the truth. But a witch can't fight against this by creating another illusion that makes sense and stays with it. And if she can create another illusion that the human cannot disprove, then it makes the other magic exist too now. Um, so then they go on further, as they say, it goes against the entire premise that it's possible for magic all to perform with tricks. You're overly gracious in allowing Erica to apply these retrospective seals, and the story was becoming warped. The situation is still not unpacking whether the seal is maintained. It hasn't been confirmed with the red truth. This is also free to break the seal. So once again, stating that it has to be in the possibilities for it to be performed as a trick also, which I've been keep on hammering it at, because like I said, a lot of people are gonna say, well, these characters are warping reality or creating reality and creating board games, but it's like, well, it's still within human means. And I've said this before, just because a character has an OP ability where they can control narratives or reality does not mean that they have no limits to that and that they can do whatever they want. There's still limits. And if it's within human confines, then it lowers that power significantly. It's not limitless anymore. And then there's still some stuff more about the board game that is very necessary that changes up the power scaling even more. But after that, they go on to say, since the game is over on each channel will be released, right? Oh, I wonder. It seems the book of the fragment only requires up to the story at this point. So even with Featherine reading reality and all these stories and stuff like that, that doesn't mean she knows everything. A lot of people say that, well, she's above all of existence and all of reality, and she views reality in the multiverse as fiction, but that isn't really true. If that was the case, she would have known everything. If she was, because people are saying she's actually the creator of the verse and she's the creator of the series and the story, so she has the power of the creator and she has the power to control all narratives and she's all knowing and that she's above views existence as fiction. If that was the case, she would not be that statement wouldn't have made any sense then. That statement wouldn't be there because she said she only knows fully to the story of what has been developed at that point by Battler. If she was creating all that stuff, she would have known the whole story at the very end. So after this, her basically her protege shows up as she pulls up to her saying, "So you've come back to life, Featherine, Aurora." So Featherine at this before this was actually dead, and she came back to life. And I'll explain why. Um, Featherine prior to this was just like Beatrice. She was, all the witches are actually the same originally. Originally, they are, regular witches, but as they play these board games with these humans, they keep on getting them in these games and winning. They get more power, and as more power they gain, they become more of a powerful witch. Uh, until to a point where they actually reach a higher level in domain, which is the creator class, which she's in, and the other two witches are also in. And once when you reach that level of power, right? Once when you get into that level of power, you become a creator witch, which Featherine did, and she's at the highest level, even within that realm. But once when she reached that realm, the problem is, even though she got significantly stronger, she was also stricken with an illness. This was stated in the light novel that apparently she was stricken with an illness of boredom, where if she is bored or gets too bored, she ends up dying. So she needs stories and creativities. This is why she does this whole drama stuff and starting problems or watching problems. It's important for her because without these stories and these drama, and these interesting stuff, she will die. So boredom kills her, actually. It literally kills her. She has an illness where boredom kills her, but she can come back to life as long as there's something entertaining happening. And since this whole story has been pretty entertaining for them, it's able to bring her back to life. So that's why she said, you're back to living and stuff, right? Um, and then they go on to say, Better is a witch, but is a witch born from a human. Better is not a child of the Holy Spirit. I'm different. I'm born from Mama alone. I was born from the Holy Spirit. Better can't create a universe without me, but I alone can. I can create a universe together with the Holy Spirit. God is with us. So this is Maria explaining that Beto was created from humans and born from humans. She's a witch, but she was born from humans, and she was only born from her mom. And she's trying to say she's like Jesus with with her mom being the Virgin Mary, and that put the Holy Spirit in her and then created her. And since she's created that way, that means she can create a universe without help. Whereas Beatrice needs somebody to create a universe. She can create a universe naturally. Now, some people say, "Whoa, that's universal levels of creation. That's insane, right?" But there are some problems with this because later on they do kind of contradict this, and there's some stuff that don't really add up. But also, the problem with Maria's a little kid and she's also delusional. She doesn't understand that her mom she did have a dad, but the dad probably abandoned her and left her, knocked up her mom and then left. And since she doesn't understand that, she just assumed that, well, I read the Bible and same thing happened with Jesus. So most likely I'm like Jesus, where, God gave my mom a baby, which was me, and that's how I came to an existence. But in reality, it's like, no, that's her own delusion. In reality, it was her dad just abandoned them. And since it's a harsh reality, she was never told that. So she now believed that actually it's because I didn't have a father. I was created by God, which is not true. And she goes on to explain more about her power, which sounds crazy, but like I said, there is a problem with this. And said that before long, I'll be able to become a creator who can create everything alone. Alone, I'll create something out of nothing, and better will expand that infinitely. And he was a witch disciple who would inherit that and spread the word. Um, that was the Witch of Alliance, Mirage, Sorcery. One and Infinite are vastly different. That's why Beto is great, but compared to existence is non-existence. One and infinite. Uh, One and infinite or finite are nothing but the same as existing. So she's just saying what Beatrice told her before, where she can infinitely bring back lives, whereas she can create lives. And when they're saying universes and stuff like that, I don't think she really means universe. I think she just doesn't understand what she's talking about, because they do explain a little bit later. Um, because Beto she doesn't create life. She just can bring back life over and over again. Whereas she does create life, but we saw she was only able to create a bit of a soul into an inanimate object like the teddy bear. So I'm guessing the universe is a representation for just creation itself. We do see later on after this, as she's talking to one of the new guys in the story, she says, by chance found a line in the Bible that seems to suggest legitimacy on herself, and for the first time she understood herself. The girl who would despised herself for being the one weird one in the class finally learned her own meaning. If you look at Murray's identity as the universe, maybe that was like the Big Bang. Before long, she met the endless witch who calls herself Beatrice of Rakujima, and then their energy created their magical conundrum. So what she was saying is that they can create a universe and all this stuff, but there is a problem. Later on, I'll explain it. But for right now, they go on to say you could say that you don't accept her. She can't exist. The Italian Beatrice and the Conjured Beatrice, those two are for sure existed. The one in 1986, the third Beatrice is something different. Who killed Beatrice? And again, to kill a Beatrice who can't exist. What does that mean? So this means right here is that there were two other Beatrice, but they were real people. This Beatrice is actually formed from the image of the real Beatrices. So you see a lot in legend that there's like some people that like this magical being or this a legendary being who was not real, but they were based off of a real person. And thus the legend became to be. Beatrice is the same thing. Beatrice, the one that we're seeing right now, the witch, never really existed, but she did come into existence from legends of these real women that actually existed and that have been created into these legends itself. So yeah, there's a contradiction right there, and that means that, or not contradiction, but there's a weirdness with her existence. That means she doesn't truly exist. Even as a witch, she doesn't truly exist. The only reason she exists is because people assume that these women that died in the past were actually her, and she is a witch and she's lived throughout these years. So it created this whole story and narrative that made her come into existence. And now this is the part where it disproves, this completely disproves Maria's assumption that she can create a universe, as the other guys explain through his narration and explanation on what she means, because she's a little girl, so she doesn't know really that well, and she's a little bit delusional. He says the minimum number of people to create a universe is two. However, Maria said that if it's only one given birth, even alone, she can do it. But even if she was to wish for a second person, she would wish for a person who would raise a world from born from her alone, because if you give birth, you don't rise it, it just dies and disappears. Let's try to replace universe for Beatrice. The minimum number of people to create Beatrice is two. However, if you only to give Beatrice, um, even alone, one can do it. But even so, that one person wished for a second person. That one wished for a second person who would recognize that Beatrice gave birth to. That means that one person who created Beatrice probably chose Maria to be that second person. So Maria is delusional, and he's explaining it in a more simpler mean. Instead of, she's saying that a universe, she can create a universe, it takes two to create a universe, or one. It's not truly the case. It's more so a being like Beatrice, or a fictional character, right? She's a fictional being, right? To create a fictional being, it takes two people at the very minimum to create something fictional. But you can create it by yourself, right? You can create a character by yourself, but you need somebody else to observe that character to make that a real thing, right? So if I think of a fictional character I'm creating in my mind, I created the idea of that character. But if I don't tell anybody, then it's only a character in my own head, and it's only a character to me. But as soon as I tell other people, that character is no longer just a idea for myself. It is actually a character out into the world, and this is how we make fictional characters into a real thing, right? So, like, when it comes to Superman, at first it was a character created by somebody or two people, but let's just say it was one person, right? One person created him. But if he didn't show it to somebody else, it wouldn't be an actual character. It would just be an idea that he has. But now that somebody else acknowledges it, then it can be a real thing, and then they can go on and further develop it. And then more people see it, and the more people see it, the more it becomes real, and then it becomes a thing. So Superman went from an idea to an actual, character that we see now, because it was created by somebody, and then that person was doing it in tandem with other people, making it more of a thing. So then it became a real thing. So she misunderstands, because Beatrice, when she was talking to her about creation, she wasn't talking about a universe, a literal universe. She was talking about creating, fiction, and creating like a fictional world, right? When we create fictional people or fictional worlds, this is us creating a universe, but we're not really creating a universe. We're just creating an idea of something, and then having other people listen to it and be like, oh, that makes sense, and this and that. And then we're making that make more sense and come more into existence. So that's what's happening here. So she's not really creating one, and using Beatrice is the example. The idea of Beatrice only exists because somebody believed Beatrice exists, but that alone can create the idea of her, but it doesn't fully form her into something until you tell somebody else that, hey, there's a witch named Beatrice, and that person, if they believe it and observe that Beatrice is possibly a thing, then it becomes more of a thing, and then they spread this more as a rumor, and then the fictional character becomes more real. And this is something they talk about even more further, as they go on to say, in the sixth game, the detective fighter Erica performed a heartless reasoning, but you needed such thing to understand that was a sleight of hand. If the person closes their eyes, and sleight of hand can be made into magic. Yes, since you believe in anti-magic toxins, she closed her eyes to erase the magical miracle. The caramel was given proof from meeting her, then melted because of Embryo's doubt. If you can caramel back with this, a girl who's so pure she allows that story Hiroshima, and in front of her, who is extremely weak against magic toxin, as a witch would say, Beatrice appeared and made her recognize her in existence. So this is also pointing further at this not actually being a universe, and it's just more of a representation of Beatrice. Because before this, Beatrice, the whole witch story about it, it was a thing, but nobody really believed in it because there were adults that didn't believe in magic. But as a kid, she did believe in it, and this brought her comfort. So she's like, Beatrice exists, and she was keep on bringing up Beatrice as a real thing, and the rest were just ignoring it. but more since she believed in Beatrice, it did make Beatrice come somewhat into existence, but she just didn't have full influence into existence. She just had a minor influence. But with that minor influence, she was able to use Maria to push more of this narrative that she exists and do stuff that are out of the ordinary by creating tricks. She made Maria create some tricks, and these tricks couldn't be explained by the rest of the adults. So they're like, maybe it might be magic, maybe whatever. So they're more skeptical. The more skeptical they were, the more she was able to come to existence until she was able to actually get physical form and mess with them directly. By her messing with them directly, it made her come into existence. So she did create, technically Beatrice. They go on to say even further, to give birth to Beatrice alone is the same as a delusion, like the interior of an egg. Yes, only after it's recognized by the second person, you have the person to warm it up for you. The shell, the cracks, and it appears. Beatrice only hatched when Miriam recognized her emerged source, Beatrice, and the end of the day could be called a nest. Beatrice, the egg created by the first person alone until before meeting with Miriam, was ripening a character dignity 1,000 years inside the shell. So, what is happening? He's basically explaining that somebody else believed in Beatrice or thought of Beatrice, and since they only believed in it, they created the idea of Beatrice, but she couldn't come into existence until that person can make somebody else believe that make them believe that Beatrice exists. So this person pretended to be Beatrice to trick this girl. They knew that this little girl believes in magic, and since she believes in magic, she's more susceptible to, to falling for these tricks. So this person pretended to be Beatrice, made this as an idea, and then manipulated somebody to actually also believe in it. So she created the idea and then had somebody else believe in it. When they have when that person manipulated Maria to believe in it, and Beatrice. Now Beatrice started to become more of a thing, and as Beatrice started to become more of a thing, as she got somebody else on her side to believe in it. Now that person was able to get other people to believe in that, and then it's represented as an egg, and she's being formed in that egg and getting created. And, her legend is being created, her legacy is being created, everything, her mythology is pretty much being created now since it's being spread around. It just needed two people to do it, and then after that it can grow. So Beatrice is not a real person. She doesn't really exist. She's not a witch that's lived for 1,000 years. She's been created by somebody else that manipulated a little girl to push this idea narrative and believe in it, and as doing so, it was able to create more and more of her, into existence. And they do go further on to mention the fact that she is actually fictional and was never a witch. Witches are all fictional in this world. Magic and witches are not real, they're fictional, but they can come into existence if people believe in it. But there is still limits to that witches and magic itself, even with that belief in there. And we do see this later on as they're talking about how her story was passed by the grandfather, who was kind of a little insane. He was the reason that this whole Beatrice magic stuff happened, because he actually, when he was younger, he was in love with a woman who was actually named Beatrice. She was an Italian woman. She ended up dying. He kind of had like a mental breakdown, and he started believing that she still exists and she's real. And then they had a daughter, and then he believed that she was the reincarnation of her. And then there was a mythology about her being like a ghost, and then, her being a witch. And he pushed this, and the idea became more and more into existence. And like I said, these things can come to existence with just the belief of a human being. And they even went on to, state that to make everybody else recognize the existence so badly. So the more that they try to make them recognize the existence, the more it became real and it became into reality. And it even said, is it became a fiction recognized by everything becomes reality. So these characters and these things like magic is fake, but you can make it come to reality if you believe in it or you make others believe in it. And it made something from fiction into reality. So when they were talking about creating the universe, it was talking about creating something from fiction into reality, and that's considered like kind of like a universe itself. And they go on to explain the whole, how her mythology came to be. First, it was like about a ghost, and then the island being haunted, and then there was like more eerie stuff happening. Then there was like a whole thing about sacrifice and a ritual, and then there was a mystery, and then all this other stuff. And it led this fictional character to go from being completely fictional to being more realistic, or no, or more possibly existing. And then you had people coming in there and then dealing with that. And then later on, we see one of the other characters from the other characters, the fragment saying that the memories of all the games so far, this is recorded, you'll be able to see the fates of the different worlds. So once again, the different worlds are not other universes or other parallel universes is just the games that they've been playing and putting this like island in a time loop, have been creating these fragments, and as they create these fragments are basically the different worlds and what happened in those, and you can pierce into it to see the memories of that and understand it. And to just further go on to disprove the whole creating universe thing, there's also a dialogue with two of the characters talking about creating a universe. One of the characters loved Battler and was hoping that he would come and propose to her, but it never really happened. And the other person saying, "Hey, she says that but at this rate, the sprouts of their roots it will end up killing you. People cannot live without a universe, and a person cannot create a universe alone. You two people need that to create the universe, the sprouts of love, together with Battler." So others could create a universe, but that just means creating a connection or an idea or a belief or a feeling. It doesn't mean literally a universe. It's just representation of that. And this literally proves that. Then the other person necessary to create my universe, Battler is not coming. You have no choice to create a universe with someone other than Battler. So once again, it's not actually the power of creation that they're showing, it's just the connections and the loves for it. Later on, we also get revealed that the amount of fragments that there are is around 2,578,917. So there's way more than the amount of games they played because they played around like 5 or 6 games, but there's more than that. And I'll explain later on, and they do explain and show why there is actually millions. Even though they've only played a few games, there are millions of other fragments. And then she said, "There's no probability involved here. I'm a witch who can find a miracle, no matter how unlikely it is, but I can't find something that doesn't exist. Since I can't win against the witch of certainty, which she guaranteed some things is certain." So, like I said, as a witch of miracles, she can make things come into make things into a miracle, but she does have limits. Of there's something where this 100% certain, she cannot do anything about it. So she cannot just make miracles out of nothing. And the witch of certainty cannot make something certain of there's something that can, of there's a chance. If there's a chance that she could lose or there's a chance that she could be wrong, she can't make it completely certain either. So she has the limit there. Um, and then they go on to explain more, saying a board game created from the public opinion, a world created to reflect the part of the public opinion. You lost your way from Battler's board game into this one. So what does this mean? They do go more in depth with the public opinion, but apparently the public opinion can create their own games and form their own thoughts on this. And by having a public opinion, you create other ones. That's how you get the over 2 million fragments. Because when it came to the witches, they only played 5 or 6 games. That would mean there would only be 5 or 6 fragments. But somehow there's over 2 million fragments. How do you get over 2 million fragments? Well, that's because of the public opinion. And this is the key important detail when it comes to the power scaling, and that changes everything. As they go on later on, Featherine has the key, has this key to the truth, and she says, "I'm the witch of theater going in exchange for being able to observe and know everything. I do not find knowing pleasure in the influence of the players on the stage. If you had to choose between battles of the born, especially which who can bear more than a minute of boredom, the key is right there." So she's basically stating that she's just an observer and that she does not actually influence the characters. She does not play with them. It's the other ones that do it. So she never really did that. And then this is giving more context clue about what they mean by the people's public perception and then the Krakens and the board game. As she goes on, as Beatrice goes on to say, as they're getting attacked because at this point, Battler was like, he won his game master. He's creating another game, and he's trying to make a positive paradise. And his sister's like, "No, I want to know the truth. This is not what really happened." He was lying, saying that they were all happy, and then they just disappeared and went to, heaven in a happy magical land. But she's like, "No, I do not believe that. That is not the truth. Tell me the truth. Stop lying to me. Stop trying to manipulate me. I want to know the truth." Because with all these scenarios and all these games, they're just falsehoods of what really happened. The real scenario that happened was a regular human means. They all died through regular human means. Prior to this, it was shown that somebody was pretend to be the witch Beatrice. It was a regular human playing that to manipulate the people there, and then the family members were killing each other. And there was two of the family members that were massacring everybody. It was Angie's parents that were doing that. They were murdering the rest of their family members, and this was just too much of a hard truth for her to accept, so she didn't want to accept it. But that is the actual truth. The actual truth was all the murders that happened on the island originally, and the island being destroyed was through human means. So humans were doing this, and the island got blown up because they set up explosives around the island. Nothing magical happened. witches were not involved, magic was not involved. It was all human means. The witches and magic stuff was only after that happened that created these board games. But as this is happening, in the game, they're getting attacked, and Beatrice says, "I'm afraid what is in the bottom is bottomless. Krakens taken from the future. You could see them on the content of the cat box called the future. The content of the cat box. They go on to say the cat box contains itself within endless. As a result of the dwellers of the outside of the box are permitted to imagine endless contents of the box, and I suppose these endless imaginings of the true form of these guys. Even though I succeeded in telling the truth in the world of the future, there's an endless number of people who will decimate and fabricate ruthlessly what the tragedy of that day was in that island. Mass media, witch hunters, foragers, writers, the readers, the ocean of the internet, of the endless floating imaginary in worlds of different with witch illusion, corporate theories of stories and outsiders sneaking into the island. They're ending the rose in all this board game. Uh, in the world of the future, everybody believes that we're all involved in a tragedy of today. This is why they won't allow our truth to be spending this in peace. No way. The cat box allows for endless imaginations, doesn't it? And all those endless truths are equal. No way that the ideas of the dwellers of the future who don't even hold the red truth can just barge in here and deny the dissolve things abruptly more than the peaceful truth that we created. They are expecting a truth that is drenched in tragedy, that is why is it plausible? So now some of you guys might be like a little confused what the hell this all means. So I'm going to stop with all the pretenses of, oh, there's something else. This means something else. I'm just going to tell you directly. A lot of people, the misunderstanding is that these board games is these witches manipulating reality and changing the outcome and doing whatever they want. That is not true. These board games in this parallel world are not real. They're just theories. That's it. That's what they mean by public opinion. That's what they're talking about theories and people's writings or assumptions. That's why there's millions of different fragments instead of just 5 or 6 because that's the games that the witches are playing. People's people when they talked about these characters and this verse, they are wrong or they're just straight up lying. They're acting as if this board games is them actually manipulating reality. It's not. It's them creating false theories of what really happened. So on the island, something truly happened. It was a murder, and it was just regular. It was through human means. It was crazy and it was mysterious because one, it happened years ago. Two, nobody knows what happened. Three, there was no real survivors besides Eve, but she didn't tell anybody, so nobody really found out. So people were just theorizing what could have happened on there. And every time they theorize what's happening on the island or in this mysterious situation, it creates a new game, and this new game is a representation of their theories. And they have battles of what could have happened, and they have to construct a proper theory. If they cannot construct a proper theory, then it won't work, and nobody would consider it. But if the theory does make sense, whether it's in regular human means or magical means, then that world can exist. And thus, it creates a fragment. And every time they create a theory and they go through what happened through those 2 days, it creates the fragment because it ends that whole theory. There's like the beginning and the end to the theory. Once when you finish your theory, it creates a new fragment, which is these worlds. These are not actual real worlds or universes or even time being manipulated, like I was talking about earlier. These are just theories of what could have happened, which are assumed as other universes. So every Kraken, every fragment, every board game is just a theory that somebody else had. The only difference is witches can also theorize their own way, and then humans can theorize. So humans theorize that it might have been a magical means bringing magic and witches into existence, and then those magic and witches that come into existence can also make their own theories, thus creating board games and dictating what happened. And there are many different pockets. So these witches cannot control the human world. They cannot control the reality or universe. The universe itself they cannot control. The most they can do is Earth, and even Earth, they cannot control all of Earth. They do not create narratives of the Earth. They create narratives in mysterious areas of the Earth. Like for example, when the Aztec disappeared, right, or the Mayans disappeared, right? we don't know what happened to them. Some people theorize that, through regular means, like maybe it was disease, maybe they killed each other off, maybe it was a big suicide thing. Some people think maybe some magical stuff happened. Some people think they probably went to another dimension. Some people think that they might have just changed who they were. So there's many different theories. And as there's many different theories, since this is a big mystery, nobody knows what happens, this becomes a separate realm where they can have all these different possibilities exist because nobody knows the truth. Now, once when the truth does come out, it disrupts the entire all these other theories and it disrupts all these other possible worlds and makes them go away. And the only thing that is there is that truth. Now, some people might disagree because, even when you show them the truth, they're not going to believe it. So there might be some existence, but as long as of the truth does come out, most likely those theories are going to go away and no longer be a thing. So these beings are not OP beings that create universes or high outer versal beings. They're literally just theories. These worlds are theories. It's not a multiverse. It's a one universe, one Earth, and multiple different theories of different mysteries. And it's not even the whole Earth, is just certain parts of the Earth. So they can only manipulate certain parts of the Earth and only the mysteries of these parts and not the truth. The reality they cannot mess with. They're only messing with the theories that are being formed into existence. That is it. So going back to it, these are theories. They're not manipulating the real world. They're manipulating these theories that are created by people. They have no real interaction to the real world. They cannot actually influence it through their magic or their powers. Their powers can only affect, theories, which in turn doesn't make them that powerful. So the board game is not a representation of them manipulating reality and seeing it as fiction. These fragments are not, representations of the universe that had been manipulated by these people. It's these theories of created by humans or by witches, and they're manipulating these theories. That's it. So people need to stop with that, and that completely, like I said, significantly changes the power scaling. Because if it was just them manipulating reality, then that's really OP. But if they're just a part of a theory and manipulating theories and consist within theories, then they're not really manipulating reality, they're manipulating theories. So the separate world or different dimension is just a different theory of what could have happened. So when you have the witch version of Angie going to there, and the real one is dealing with the real island in the real world, whereas the other one's dealing with a theory of what happened and trying to make that theory come and when I mean come into reality, I just mean having people believe that it actually happened. So after this, we have a Lady Lambert showing up. As she shows up, she says, they say, "You are a high witch, aren't you? You can do something. If I get swallowed up by nothingness, I die. Sorry, but I'm satisfied being a spectator." So she shows up, just like besides Beatrice, Lady Lambert, and the Witch of Miracles, and Featherine, they're witches that are not a part of this theory. Because in this whole situation, the theory was, there's a witch on this island named Beatrice. These other witches were never mentioned or a part of it. So they were a part of other theories that they were able to, win those games and came to the higher level of the creators. And since they went to that higher level of the creators, they basically are outsiders and they can observe what's happening in this game. And she herself says, "I'm an observer just like Featherine." But if she does get involved in the story, she can end up dying. So it's not like she's transcends their power anyway. It's just that since she's an observer, she doesn't have to get into the game. Beatrice is literally directly a part of the game because this is her story. If she ends up failing, she ends up of the truth comes out and that she gets just proven to not exist, then she will be wiped out from existence. But these other witches were never a part of the story, so they can pick and choose if they want to be in it or not. If they don't want to be in it and just observe it, it will have no effect on them. But once when they choose to be in it, it does have an effect on them. And if the truth does come out and it disproves witches, then that witch is also going to be erased from existence. Um, they go on to say the outside of the game board is not my domain. You cannot set up beside it unless you're a higher tier, which like Lady Bestal or Lady Lambert would do is another the Golden Land. So yeah, so even Beatrice basically says, "I'm stuck within here. These other witches were not a part of this, mythology. I was, and I'm pretty much gonna be stuck here. But they don't have that a problem because they're on a higher dimension, and they don't really mean higher dimension. Like I said, is just the fact that they broke out of their whatever happened in their situation, their mystery. They've been theorized. It's never come into uh the light. The truth has never been come into light. So people just like accepted those theories. And since they accepted magic might be possible. They stayed, and then they were able to move on and leave those mysterious areas and just stay wherever they are. She goes on to say, then there's no way to go from knowing to not knowing. That's all the stories that I devoured, more than the stars in there, only to be easily bored. If I hadn't come to the truth, I would have been able to enjoy them deeper and longer. And if you want to enjoy illusions, you can do it knowing there's a hardship that you overcome by listening to this. It's harsh to push the system around more than in a story. There's enjoyment in stories that the children of men weave on their own. So once again, this part right here is really important because a lot of people were saying, well, she has the ability to create realities and universes and narratives, and she views the world as fiction and this and that. And it's like, if that was the case, then why would she mention the children of men can also weave these stories? These stories are just theories and beliefs of what could have happened, right? A mystery, a situation happened where there's something that was mysterious. Nobody knows truly what happened. So people start to theorize what could have possibly happened. And since they theorize, they're creating stories. And as they create stories, they're creating these worlds, but they're not really worlds. They're just an illusion. It's just, theories, right? But they're able to create it. So it's not like Featherine is the only one who has the power to do it. Even regular humans have the power to do that, which is simply just theorizing. Anybody can do that. Anybody can create a story. So she's not special. She's not unique. She herself acknowledges that others can do it. The witches have done it and humans have done it. And before they said that the humans one are just as equal as the witches one. So even if the witch can create their own narrative, humans can do that and it'll be equivalent. The only reason that Beatrice was losing is because their narrative was trying to make something positive, and most people believe that what happened on the island was really actually bad and tragic, which is the truth. Is something tragic happened. There's very few ways you can look at it and say it was actually a positive thing that happened, or it could have been viewed in a positive light. It's only negative. So it's more likely to have negative theories than positive theories that they probably survived or they got away or they're safe or whatever. Now they go into, Featherine's dimension. They're trying to find her. He says, I've heard this place is a sacred place where all the fragments of the voyagers come upon their travels of the ocean. Of fragments are stories are stored as stories, as they call the honored capital of the books, and blessed by the High Witch of the Drama, Spectator, and Spectatorship. The Great Lady Aurora is the master of the capital of books, so does this A Quiet Place. To be exact, Lady Lambert. They're actually announcing it from here as we reveal the party. So they're saying that this dimension basically houses all the other fragments, and all these other fragments were basically theories and ideas of what happened in other situations, because this whole the mystery on this island is not unique. There's many countless mysteries throughout the earth, right? When we look through history, we know there's a lot of stuff missing in history, and since there's a lot of stuff missing in history, the best we can do is just theorize what possibly happened. Now, historians and people who are more logical are going to theorize in a more natural, normal sense. But then we also have weirdos and nutcases who believe in magic or aliens or doing this or that. So they have these other theories that what could have possibly happened. And with all these theories and ideas of what happened in these mysterious situations or circumstances, whether it comes with people or a certain place, they create these fragments, and these fragments are turned into stories, which each theory does become a story, right? Of you have a theory when we hear theories of a certain situation that we don't know the truth of, they're all different stories of the same thing, but just different ways of it, and we just don't know which one is true. We can dispel some because some are more ludicrous than others, but we just cannot say confidently that one is true and the other one is not. So this is just a metaphor for people's mindset on theories, and these theories are just fragments and they can be housed, and then it creates legends and legacies and different things. Um, as they go on to say further, since this is being the last party, Aurora is gathering honored guests from all the lands, all the books of the one truth is to become the final highlight of that party. Anyway, they have the limit of bitch losing their effectiveness if they're not valid at the front desk before party begins. Um, so they're just trying to get there. Um, as they go on, they're trying to get basically the Witch of Certainty to help them out. It's like, come on, we really need you to help us out. This will be a really great story. Don't you want to beat the Witch of Miracles? And now she's getting mad and she's like, you guys are nothing to me. You guys are just a bunch of stories. You're a bunch of characters. You're a bunch of pieces I get to play with, which is true because they're not real people. They're theories of real people. And says, all of you soon will vanish into nothingness. You'll become crumbles between the goat's teeth. You are nothing more than characters to me. Do you think a specter like me would react if I was asked to die with you? So she herself acknowledges that, hey, you guys were based off of real people, but you are the theories of what those real people possibly did or what happened to them and their scenarios. That's also how Beatrice is able to create them. She's not really bringing humans really back to life. She's bringing back these theorized versions of these real people back to life. Because when you theorize about a person that died and what happened to them, you're technically kind of bringing them back to life in this scenario and seeing what happened that led them to their death. So you're able to keep on bringing them back if you have different theories on what possibly have happened to them. So this is not literally meaning that they're creating people or that they're literally, manipulating people. This just means that when you think about it metaphorically, it's like theories. When you theorize something, you're possibly or thinking of something coming into existence, and you're manipulating that. Then later on, they do mention a few things about, oh, the kitties are gathering and stuff, and I thought of building a whole universe just with the two of us. What a pity! So the two witches were kind of in love. They were talking about building a universe, but we already talked about this. When they say universe, they don't mean a literal universe. It's just a representation of an idea like love, and their love is supposed to be the universe. Um, and then they go on to say the legendary great witch, she is on the level of a creator within the world of the witches, a witch who has arrived in the domain of the forbidden to touch. She once died of the illness and boredom that kills witches, but with the help of the other witches she keeps as a cat. As Baron, she was reborn, so just like we witches look down on humans from a higher sphere and ridicule them as mere pieces, she laughs and looks down upon even the realm of the less witches from an even higher world. So this is where people said she actually looks at existence as fiction and this and that. That's not true. I don't think people can read properly or understand properly. What's stated right here first was not by by Featherine. It was by the other witch. And she was explaining, saying that Featherine is the witches are on a higher level of dimensional level above the humans where they can view them and mess with them and manipulate them. And she's on an even higher level than that, where she can not only directly mess with the people, she can also directly mess with the witches themselves. But we know that this is not as straightforward as a lot of people make it out to be, because they're going to be like, well, that technically means she's a higher dimensional level and she's above even these witches that can manipulate humans in reality. But once again, these are they're the problem with this is they're not actually manipulating real humans or real people or actual reality. They're manipulating theories of these real people. So there was real people, some mystery happened where a bunch of people died, right? Nobody saw it, nobody knew what happened. Some people theorized regular means, some people theorize in a more supernatural means. And then since the supernatural means is theorized and has not been disproven because the truth hasn't come out, it's possible they can come into existence, and now they can also mess with the theories of these characters and people. So technically they are messing with humans, but not the real humans. They're messing with the theoried versions of these humans and can create their own stories and narratives of what happened to them and do whatever they want to them as a witch. But Featherine can do that to those theorized humans and areas too, but also the witches, because the witches are also theories that were created by humans, and Featherine is also created by humans. So Featherine is not really manipulating humans, she's manipulating ideas of humans that are theorized now, and she's manipulating witches that are also fiction that got created from these theories, and she herself got created from that. The only difference is when she was playing her game and the theories, she was able to prove her points very well and hide the truth as much as possible, to the point where she was able to transcend um her board game and then go to a higher level of witchhood. And as she reached that high level, she was able to surpass the other witches and be superior to them. They do talk about her also, her other weakness with the memory thing on her chest or her head. If they destroy it, then her memories will come out because she had multiple games. So this is her fragment throughout all of her games that she played, which we don't get to see it all. Now, this is the panel or the image that a lot of people used to show off her insane power of manipulating reality and narratives and creating narratives and writing it. As she's getting attacked by the witch of certainty, she's able to write into a story about her screaming and going after her to attack her, and then writing it down, even mentioning she's writing it, and then trying to saying that she's developing the story to beat her, and then she ends up killing her. So people use that image to say, see, she can manipulate reality. She can even control witches, and she's easily, obviously, high out reversal if she can control characters on this level. But the problem that we find out is she's not really manipulating the real world or real people. She's manipulating theories of real people and what possibly happened to them. So she has no real power or control over actual regular people. It's not the same. On the surface level, if you didn't read it properly, you can think that yeah, she's manipulating everything. But when you see it through the actually read the story and understand it, you realize that actually she's not really doing what you think she's doing. She's not actually as powerful as you guys think she is. So yeah, so when you look at it that way, it does seem like she's OP because of the fact that she can manipulate narratives, and she did control the other witch and ended up killing her, and she's also a high level witch. But when you understand the actual story and what we find out about these witches and magic, the witches and magic aren't actually real. It's not like other verses where it's actually a part of their system. It's something that is created from the human thought and mind from these theories of certain mysteries. There's mysteries in certain areas where something happened where a bunch of people disappeared or a bunch of people got killed or crazy stuff was happening and nobody could really explain it, even though there was a logical explanation for it. It ended up not, the truth, it never really came out. So people started assuming and making theories on what possibly had happened, right? So with those theories, you're obviously going to develop some more crazier, more out there theories that are usually more supernatural, especially if the case might be a little bit more, unnatural and unexplicable, right? If it's something that is crazy but is still easily explained through just only regular means, then yeah, but there's going to be a lot of cases where magic might be assumed, and that happens a lot, we see this throughout history a lot. So those are the different pocket areas where a lot of things get theorized, and that's when it gives form to these ideas like witches and magic, and that's how people like Featherine is here. But Featherine does not affect any regular humans or the real world. She's affecting the theories from the real world. So there's parts in the real world of real humans and real places that are theorized what could have happened in these real situations that had real scenarios, but these are fake theories that have been created by people then now she's able to manipulate. So she's able to manipulate and create her own theories like the other witches. And by creating them, you play the board games. And once when you're done with the theory, it creates these fragments, which is these different worlds. But in reality, it's not actual real worlds. She's not actually messing with the real people. She's messing with the theorized versions of those real people. And the witches, the reason she was able to control her fate and write her narrative was due to the fact that she was only created from humans' conscious mind. So it's not like she's, messing with any regular ass human. She cannot change the actual laws of nature. She cannot actually control any regular person and dictate their life. She can only do it to the theories that the other witches can. So it does make her seem like she's this very powerful being that can control everything, but it's really specific and oddly specific on what it is. And even then she has control. The control is still on a human level. She can't just, do whatever. So there's still limitations there. And it really kind of ruins the power scaling when you look at it in that lens. So after this, we have the witch miracles basically talking shit about the other witch dying. This piss off battler, so he basically punches her right in the face. And they even mention how she's never been hurt this much in hundreds of years. So even just regular physical attacks can damage them. So she gets mad. She basically summons, gets all the heroes from other stories to be summoned by Featherine. She says, "These cats are the ruined remains of what were once the protagonists of the games, just like you. Every one of them was guaranteed the grace of Aurora and amazing fame in the heroic stories they were cast, and every one of them fought for swearing for the countries, the stars, and even the lives of the universe itself. It is only that you separates you as the main character from you. Them is a little sister, as well as the tomfoolery with all the illusionary our witch." So she's saying that, hey, you might be a hero in this story, in this theorized story of what happened negatively, and you're the game master now. But these other beings or these other heroes or whatever, there was other stories, obviously. And like I said, there's been many mysteries throughout the world. We don't know what happened, and some people theorize magical. And these are the people, these are the personifications of those characters in that story that had been hyped up as the heroes, and they won their games also, and they're coming from their own other mysteries to fight against him and his. So they have their own legends. It's kind of like in reality where you have a real historical figure, and that real historical figure has a lot of stuff about their life that is missing, and we don't know about it. So, but we do know that there's been legends and theorized that this person has done some crazy things. So, there's legends that are built up about certain historical figures that make them sound even more impressive. But historians always say that yes, they do sound interesting. We can get some historical information from it, but this is most likely, this is most likely like just a legend where they're hyping them up even more, and this is not actually true. So it's hard to discern between those two, but we don't have any proof to disprove that either. So that's kind of what's happening with them. But they ended up attacking him. They do zero damage to him. She's like, "What the hell is happening?" And then she said, Feathering basically replies, "I'm afraid this is beyond even the power of these cats. None can interfere with their story now. These guys are the protagonists of countless worlds, but to the story of Battler and his people, they are outsiders. They do not have the capabilities to enter into their tale." And then she said, "This is their own story. Only they are allowed to weave it on. There is the special cause that allows only game masters to weave a story on a game board. As soon as the rule was installed, in an important little writer like myself was has to follow and respect it. Thus, I will return to my seat as a spectator." So she's also saying that she has a limitation. What happened was when they attacked him, it didn't work because they're not actually a part of his story. They are heroes in their own stories, but they came from different stories to affect his one, which they had no actual like relevance in there. And then second of all, he's the game master, so he can weave the story however he wants, and they will have no effect on him. They might have won their games, but they're not a part of his. So they want their like I guess is gonna let's just consider their theories as like a separate world, and they want their separate world, but he's the king of his separate world, and we're right now in his world, and they cannot interfere in it. And even somebody like Featherine, which a lot of people, like I said, love to ignore the fact that there are limitations to her abilities. And when you already know the secret that these are all theories, it doesn't really matter. She's what her power is and what she's controlling is not that impressive because she's controlling fictional, real people that were fictionalized in these theories, and she's just manipulating those stories. That doesn't really matter in the end of the day. But let's say, for argument's sake, that she is able to warp reality. Okay, she would still have a limitation here with this, that she cannot affect somebody that has their own story, like with him. She cannot affect his she cannot affect him in general since he's the game master. So she would still have a limitation. It's not like she can do whatever and she's limitless or high out reversal. For you to be high out reversal, she wouldn't have that limitation. So that is just wrong. And then later on, we see as the Witch of Miracles is still talking shit to Angie. Now she's saying that even to a witch of the future, with the freedom of interpretation, overriding events, exists a truth that she cannot rewrite, no matter how much she struggles. This is about death. This is the one blade of truth that allows a witch of the rest of the past to destroy a witch of the future. You cannot overturn a concept of death, be it physical or psychological. So she's telling her that, hey, you might be from the future and you might know more about us and more about these other theories and have these other theories ahead of us that we're stuck in the past. But one thing but the problem is you still cannot bring people back from the dead, even with your power, who physical or psychological. So she's bound to those concepts. But even within theories, because you can theorize how the person got killed, what happened in the situation, but the problem is of it is stated directly that the person died. You cannot lie and say that, oh, actually they're alive, because that wouldn't make any sense. Most people would just say no, that theory is wrong. Now, if they didn't find a body or they didn't find any clues of the person's death, then maybe you could say they could have escaped. But if they're clearly dead, or people think that they're dead, then you cannot disprove that. And that's what happened with the rest of the Battler family. They all died. There was proven, and there was no way to go against it. So yeah, there's that. Then later on, we see Angie being thanked by Featherine, saying, good job, you guys did great." She's saying that, "I'm not gonna fight you guys. I'm not here to fight you." And then Angie's like, "Well, okay, can you bring back Lady Lambert? She didn't deserve to die." She's like, "Okay, I'll save her." But once again, remember, she's a fictional character, so she has the ability to control her. And then later on, she tells her, "Hey, can you just not bring out the book and the truth? Don't do it because it's gonna ruin her family's reputation." But Featherine said, "Okay, fine, but this will leave the game board open, and then somebody else can still play it. If we get out the truth, then guess what? It dispels cause all these other theories, and then you can't play this game anymore, and this will be over. But she's like, I would rather have them have this fairy tale ending of what happened instead of going through what truly happened, which was actually tragic, because then they're going to end up in the tragic scenario. Um, then Featherine even goes on further to say, even though there's really humans cannot perceive the red truth, therefore, as long as there are people who are doubt the authenticity of the Diary of Illusion of the cat box will prevail, even though it really is the truth that is not all that makes up the incident. Is nothing is more than the results of it. So she's just directly telling her, hey, look, in the end of the day, the red truth is basically the thing in their game where they say the red truth, that's the direct truth. You cannot argue against it. So if the humans cannot see the direct truth that they cannot argue against, even if they bring out the actual truth, some people might not believe in it no matter what. And they cannot just, because with the red truth, you can't make any arguments. It's just directly there, but they can't see that. So they wouldn't know that it's directly exactly the truth. They will still assume that there's, something's wrong. We see this all the time in real life where, some people, they were told something happened and they're like, nope, I don't agree with accounts of what really happened. And then they still go with their theories, even though you get the truth out. They're like, whatever, man. So that's the case. But she even admits right here the real truth. So she herself, like I said, directly is stating 100% verbatim that all the other stuff that you're seeing here are all illusions, they're all theories, they're all just falsehoods of what truly happened. And there's an actual truth and there's these false truths, but as long as the real truth is not out, these false truths can kind of also exist here, but she can only affect those ones, not the actual truth or the actual world itself. She then later on says, I shall write down the ending that will come to pass as an outsider, because she's not from actually a part of this game. She was a part of some other game some other time. They never showed the story of it. They never told us. All we know is that she was just like any of the other witches. She played her role in the game, proved her existence to them, beat them, and then she got higher in levels of power, and she kept on doing it, and then started eating up these other stories, and it got her even more powerful. But it's only powerful compared to them. Then in the end, she basically goes on to say, if you write a story to a certain point, you can say it's fully written. It has been passing through me in all these long years of someone who writes the journeys of humans make for such entertaining stories. Yet, but for some reason, does the journey start and where does it end? Even I do not know these answers. So she's directly telling you she doesn't know the answers to everything, which a lot of these people said she's the author of the universe. She created everything. She's the author of the story, all this stuff, and these ridiculous claims. But it isn't true. If she truly was, the author of everything and creator, she would know what is the end of the stories. She would know the answers. She wouldn't need all this stuff. The reason why she's saying that is because, yes, as an observer, she can learn a lot because she's on the outside looking in. She can see the truth. She can try to see, all these other theories and then write them down as books and then put them in her, bookshelves and stuff. But these books are not her writing reality. It's just writing what actually happened. It's either writing actual theories that other people made or other witches made, or writing actual scenarios of what happened. She's not writing down reality. That's fucking bullshit. You guys don't, it's like you guys didn't pay attention. So that's all the information I had right there. But now I want to go to the ending, right? You guys, I've seen a lot of people, and this is one thing that really annoys me about the power scaling community. A lot of you guys, especially when you come to, anime and manga, a lot of you guys tend to not read properly the stories. You tend to over exaggerate and you take things out of context, and it's annoying. Featherine should never be ever in the, discussion of the most powerful being in all of fiction or in anime and stuff like that. People were comparing her to the Marvel universe and saying she's above the Marvel universe. Where the fuck did you guys get this? You guys do not pay attention for shit. So the guy that said that she's human level is kind of technically true, because she does come into human form into the real world, and that's the only way she can interact with the regular world without the theories. She can actually interact, but as a human, she doesn't have any magical powers because that's her human side. We already talked about this with Angie. There's the human side and then there's the witch side. The witch side lives in the, magical dimensions and then dealing with the theories and these false versions of these people that have been accounted by others, right? And then you have the human version, which they are actually within the real world dealing with these stuff, but these problems that they're dealing with are regular human stuff. And then later on in the story, Angie finds out her bodyguard was doing some sneaky shit and was pretty much a bad guy. So she ends up shooting and killing him. She doesn't use any magical powers. She kills him directly with a weapon, even though she's the endless witch. Why would she do that? She did that because she directly does not actually have powers. Same thing with Featherine. So the guy is right. She is technically human level, but somebody disagreed and said, well, that isn't true. The reason it isn't true is the fact that, well, Featherine has the witch side and you're talking about the human side. But yes, but the witch side has no real effect on the real world. And then when it comes to a versus battle or power scaling, it wouldn't matter because she fights in a fictional world. So her witch side is a part of a fictional stuff that does not even really affect it. And then the human side that does is just a regular ass human. So yes, he is technically right. You were right for explaining more, but you're lying to the fact that you're acting like the witch side can actually do some shit and actually her power is relevant. It is not. The human side would be, and she's just a regular human. So that guy was right. So kudos to him for disagreeing with these dipshits. These guys are completely wrong, and this is what pisses me off about a lot of you power scalers, because when it comes to other verses like Dragon Ball, where there's directly statements of them destroying the universe and this and that, and countless times stating it and by credible sources, you guys disagree with it, and you always try to find some argument or excuse to try to minimize it or disprove it. But when it comes to these characters that have been directly either telling you the story or it's vague, you just automatically believe it. You believe that they're this highly powerful, or they directly tell you these limitations or these problems, and you guys just ignore it. You guys hear these krakens and say, well, or these fragments, whatever they're called, right? You see the fragments and you're like, this is a multiverse. Are you fucking stupid? Do you not think when you read this shit? They never said this is a fucking multiverse. It's the same universe repeated in a time loop and turned to crystal shards afterwards, but they have no effect. It's not like they exist. It's not like universes outside there. They're little crystals that you can just go into and see into the memories. And these crystals are representations of each theory of these situations. That's it. That makes it even less impressive. So they're not even real. They're just theories. And these theories are, they're not even universes existing at the same time. So she does not consist in an actual multiverse and hangs above that. That's not true. And then the statement she stated she views the world as fiction. She never stated that. The other lady stated that she was above the witches and and the witches are above humans and she views them all as lesser beings. But that doesn't mean she views them as fiction. But then again, the stories that the things that she's manipulating are stories that are fictional, that aren't real. They weren't the real situation. She even admits that there's the real truth of what happened, and these are the falsehoods. She could only mess with the falsehoods, not the truth. She can't change the truth. The truth is the truth no matter what. So it's just mind-bogglingly stupid. Her power scaling is very weird when it comes to comparing them. It does not work. Okay, so it's just incorrect. There's many things wrong. So the cosmology is not a multiverse. It's a single universe. And that single universe has not really been even looked in depth into. The only thing they really looked in depth into was the Earth, because the Earth is the only thing that matters. She has no effect or bearing on the universe. And it wouldn't make any sense if she was the narrator and created everything, since she's only 1,000 years old. She had to obviously be created within the universe for her to be 1,000 years old. And we know she's been created just like the other witches by human thought. So she would not be high out or versal if she was created from human consciousness. She would have to have no limitations. She would have to surpass human consciousness and surpass uh a cosmology with an infinite amount of dimensions. But she lives in a cosmology like ours, where it's like a three or fourth dimension at most. She does not live in a dimension that is infinite. So that's just bullshit. Just even if she's transcends all the dimensions in her cosmology, that doesn't mean she's outerversal. Her cosmology would have to be outerversal itself for her to be considered outerversal. It cannot just be 3D or 4D and then she's above that and you say, well, she's outerversal. That's not how it works. That's stupid. So yeah, I do not want to hear any more from these Feathering fans and the fans of this anime. Once again, I'm gonna look it up. I'm just gonna call them the When They Cry series, but I know it is Umineko. People just always call it Umineko, and I've seen people having polls about how strong is the Umineko verse. They're saying Battler is outer versal. They're saying all the witches are outer versal. They're saying she's high outer versal. But then it's like Battler. This is not even a real Battler. This is a fucking theorized version of him. So yeah, I don't want to hear any more from you guys. Don't make any more stupid arguments about this. You guys can disagree in the comment section down below, but I read the story thoroughly and I understand it. I don't think either most people understand it or they're just lying. And it's funny because a lot of people always say that the Dragon Ball fans don't understand, they all say that Dragon Ball fans don't know how to read and they don't even understand their own story. But then you guys also from other fandoms say stupid shit that it's like, you guys, did you even read or watch the series? Did you even pay attention? Did you just hear something cool and impressive and then ignore what was told to you, what the context with that and just say, yep, they did this? Because that's what you guys did with her. You're like, oh, well, she controlled this girl and she can control narratives and she was talking about stories, but then didn't look behind where it came from. And even within that, she has a limitation. She can't just do whatever. She has to do it by human means, like I said before. So it's limited by human possibility and what humans can do. And then second of all, the problem with that was um the fact that she also cannot do that to somebody who is a game master of their own game. So she can't just control anybody. If they have their own story and they're controlling that story, she cannot control that story then anymore. She has no say over it. It's only that person that has say over it. Until afterwards is over, then she can do whatever she wants. So yeah, even within the confines of that and ignoring the fact that these are theories, she still has limitations that would not make her high out reversal or even out reversal at all. So yeah, stop with the bullshit, guys. Um, every argument you can make. There is no multiverse. The fragments are not representations of actual real worlds. They're just theories. She's not manipulating the real world. She's manipulating theories. She cannot have a limitless control of the narrative. She can only control the narrative of theories. And even within those theories, she cannot control the narrative of people and their own stories and those theories that they are the game master of. And she can only do it within human means, and magic and witches can only exist within those human means, and they do have limitations as a whole. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and stay tuned for next time.